pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to have a moment of silence, please, for the tragedy that happened in Boston, for all the victims and all the police and fire and federal agents that helped us through this. Thank you. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? The correspondence from me was Mr. Gonzalo asked if anyone wanted to serve on the Charter Review Commission. So I am going to volunteer Mr. Eric, and I was that nice, Mr. Eric?
You did what?
For this.
Second.
We did it last year. Last time, the Charter Review Commission, we just send in our piece from the school, so it's accurate.
All right.
Okay, so is that okay with everyone? And if anyone else wants to do it, they can just contact Mr. Gonzalo.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr.
That's okay.
Okay.
Personnel.
Personnel?
Yes, the leaves FMLA, Pam Nadu, and we just received the retirement notification from Brenda Valcourt from Tiverton Middle School.
And did it make it easier now that we have a policy on that, the family medical leaves
Yes.
and everything?
Yeah,
We ironed that
qualified.
whole
Yeah.
thing out. That's good. Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to move up 6D, followed by 6C.
Second.
All those in favor? Mr. Rivett?
Yeah, as the committee is aware, we've received a lot of feedback from parents regarding the student incentive program that is being proposed at Ranger School. Since the issue is not addressed in the student's code of conduct, Ranger's code of conduct, nor do we have a policy on it, I felt...
District-wide we don't, right?
What's that?
District-wide we don't
District, that's
have
what I mean.
one.
District-wide, there's no policy. I felt the issue should come before the committee for discussion as to, as I said in my communication to you folks, as to the nature of incentives in general. From a district standpoint, do we want them? If so, what should the guidelines be? You know, should we create some and have them, or should we not have them at all? So in order to, before we kind of get into that, I'd just like to have the principals explain what they do currently, so you have some context, and then I think that might help with the purposes of discussion. Again, as we know, well, I shouldn't say as we know, the district for a number of years, probably since we started testing with the state, have offered some form of incentives at various schools. It started when I was a principal here back in 1999, and I believe schools throughout the district have been using it since then. Unfortunately, as we know, some students are not as engaged if there is no grade attached or incentive for them to complete the test or try to do their best on the test. This is probably more so with the older students, especially high school students, where they ask, is this going to count? And is Mrs. Blaze here? I'll let her just talk about what the CASSET does, and we'll go through each school.
We tried to create some excitement about the test with the students this year, so my guidance counselor and I found a great YouTube video of a Katy Perry song that sang different strategies: get a good night's sleep, eat a good breakfast, and it went to the tune of her fireworks song, so the kids really caught on and they were singing it, and we had a great time. We also sent a letter home reminding the parents of when the testing window is and making sure that the kids have a good breakfast and go to bed early. And then we decided that we would have an incentive. This is the first time we've ever tried this. We told the kids that if they earned a 4, they'd have a special ride, which is being put on hold pending this meeting and your decision.
Suzette?
At Paul Barton School, NECAP, all of our strategies are infused. Our teachers do NECAP strategies constantly, so it's not something that's separate. And before NECAP, I go into the classrooms and I give a motivational speech to the children, all about teamwork and just putting effort forth and do the best they can. And during NECAP, in the morning I give some congratulating announcements, and all the students clap for the kids. And after our spring science testing, our entire school gets extra recess for the kneecap effort.
Thanks. Is that Manny?
As far as getting ready for kneecap, we do a lot of preparation at Ranger prior to the test in October. The teachers spend a lot of time using release tasks, reviewing tasks, and going over the type of questions that students will be exposed to on the test. We also send out a monthly newsletter. The newsletter contains tips as far as students getting a good night's sleep, good night's rest, making sure they have breakfast in the morning, and being ready for the hour and a half to 2 hours that they put in during the testing environment. Each day during the test, classroom teachers monitor the test, make sure the kids are doing their best and motivated to do their best. And we offer extra recess on the days of the test, and that's determined by the classroom teacher. At the end of the testing cycle in October, we had an ice cream party for all the students for their participation during kneecap. During my going around to the classrooms, motivation, talking to the kids about the importance of the test, I did mention to the students that received a 3 or 4 on both math and reading, we'd have an extra pizza party for the students and their parents. Students that received a 4 on both math and reading, they were going to get a limo ride to Mrs. Ball, and at the time, it was just a statement that I made. I wasn't really sure what we were going to do. Once I got the scores back, there were 22 students that qualified for the limo ride, and determined that we were going to do the limo ride in Tiverton. We were going to start at the school. It was going to be done on a Saturday. We'd start at the school, we'd go to Gray's Ice Cream, get some ice cream, go to Town Farm for a little bit, and then go to South Shore, for Flagland Beach, for a little bit, and then we'd end up back at the school. It was going to take about 2 hours for the limo ride. The pizza party, there was 57 students that qualified for that. We determined we were going to do that on a Thursday night, and I invited the kids and their parents to come celebrate their accomplishment on the kneecap. That's what we did this year, Randy.
And again, the pizza party.
The two incentive parts have been put on hold pending this meeting.
Lori?
Back in middle school, we took this test very seriously. We also realized that although we want kids to be intrinsically motivated, sometimes an extrinsic reward of some sort, an inducement works. We had a post-kneecap dance with the DJ during the day for our 5th and 6th graders during the last 2 periods of the day, and that was for 100% of our 5th and 6th graders. Thank you, Mr. Beck, for helping with that. We had a pizza party and movie afternoon for our 7th and 8th graders, every single one of them. My husband and I donated $1 to the Boys and Girls Club for every student who improved. So we ended up donating about $300, but we never, I never revealed which kids improved and which didn't. I really guesstimated. And the kids mentioned it every morning, help Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Mitchell go broke, best effort, that sort of thing. And they were kind of fist pumping me in the hallway saying, I want a buck, with my name, so on and so forth. So that was a pretty good inducement. Also, I did a Connect Ed message home, and it mentioned about, rest and nourishment and encouragement and all of those things that kids need to get ready for any big day. And I do words of wisdom every morning. I did snack Snickers, but I wanted to leave the kids enjoying it. And so leading up to the test, most of the folks were focused on effort. And one morning I quoted Gandhi, satisfaction lies in the effort, not in attainment. Full effort is total victory. And so, see if it works. It's steady in a couple of games. So, you would differentiate 100% of the kiddos that participate
And the $300, no one really knows who approved it, who didn't. I hope it's $600 next year.
Steve?
The strategies for getting kids ready for the kneecap at high school have changed significantly this year, with the forefront of the class of 2014 having the requirement of receiving a 2 or better as one of the graduation requirements. Now, the strategies that we've had prior to this have been in place for probably at least 5 to 6 years. And that's just something we've developed over the years. We always have in October assembly about a couple of days before the test to explain the schedule and English and math test taking strategies by the department chairs to the junior class students. Once again, this year was a little bit more, was more significant with the graduation requirement being put in place. All of the students who demonstrate effort, and it's a basic rubric of cooperation, test taking, completion, attendance, they receive a complimentary homecoming dance ticket every year, and that's funded by the student council. Those juniors who are able to score a 3 or better are waived from their senior year or in math or ELA course mid-year exam as long as they're maintaining a 70 average the following year. In the springtime, when the science kneecap comes about around the first or second week in May, we don't have the advantage of having another homecoming dance. So what we did is, this probably started about 3 or 4 years ago. Once again, the same thing, as long as kids all contributed their best effort and were noted to do so, they'd all be entered into a raffle, and we sponsored 6 prom ticket winners for the junior prom that would be held probably about 3 to 4 weeks after the test was scheduled. And then the same thing would hold true for the science class in the senior year. If juniors were able to attain a 3 or better on the kneecap, their science course as seniors, the mid-year exam, they would be able to opt out of as long as they were maintaining the 70 average.
Thanks, Steve.
Mr. Rarick, I think in your memo to us, you laid it out really well. I think there's 2 separate issues here. I think first is what, if anything, we're going to do regarding the current incentives, and then second, once we've gone through our discussion of kneecap PARCC, standardized testing, what we might want to do on a go-forward basis. I really see those 2 as very separate. As I think we've all seen, the incentives used are very diverse. I personally am not in favor of changing those. I think that the principals have put them in place. I think they need to stay for this year. So I would like to see us leave what's in place now at all schools, and then focus going forward based upon our goals for standardized testing on a policy around incentives that will connect with the goal. But I'm just one voice, but I'm not interested in, I think, changing the incentives that the principals have already put in place this year.
Could you make, do you want to make that into a motion so we can discuss it?
Do you want to make the motion?
Sure. I'm going to move that all incentives that have been put in place by our principals this year shall stay, and we will look at changing incentives on a go-forward basis for next year.
Second.
I also want to state that I'm not opposed to offering, and excuse my voice, appropriate incentives. I do feel very strongly that the incentives that were offered and promised this year, we need to provide. We do need to keep our word to students. I would, however, like to have a discussion moving forward as a district about what we feel are appropriate incentives for the various grade levels, because obviously what's appropriate at the high school and seems to be working well, midterm exemption, will not work at an elementary level. And after such a discussion, have a policy developed.
Mr. Burgundy?
I agree that we should not change anything which was promised to students right now, but at the same time, I don't know if we have to have this policy socialistic approach that all schools have to do the same things, and actually having diversity and giving the principals if the free rein to actually choose incentives what they feel is best for the school. Well, if this creates results, maybe we can use the best practices as opposed to us here defining what the appropriate incentives would be and having those implemented across the district. I think I don't think there's any policy which is needed, because certainly
Well-
no one's rights are violated, and sometimes the approach of rewarding students who are exceptional. We pay a lot of attention to the students who need a lot of help, and we pay very little attention to students who are exceeding expectations. And doing this, limo ride or whatever it is, it's not everyone has to do this in every school, but if you have this kind of an idea, there's nothing wrong with this, in my opinion. But
So the motion really is speaking to what we're doing now. I mean, we can have the discussion about what we're going to do go forward. I don't think we're going to make those decisions
I
tonight.
think Mr. Burgundy agreed with
Yeah,
that.
I agree with
it.
that.
And
Right.
Again, I would just, not, I know Jerry wants to speak. I use the term guidelines because it could be in a policy, or it could be what we discuss, could be put into the student handbook. Just something, I don't think it needs, if that's the direction the committee goes, I agree, we don't want it to be overly prescriptive, but we also want it to be age appropriate, as all the things we talked about. And how we do that, I think, will be up to us to discuss, if that's the direction.
Right, and I think we need to have that discussion, because I strongly disagree with Mr. Burgundy that we don't focus on the accelerated learners. I think we do. We have an accelerated program at the middle school. We recognize their achievement quite frequently in Spotlight on Success. We have we just had a discussion about class ranking, and why we wanted to maintain that. So I think we're always striving for a balance, and I think we do a pretty good job. But again, we can discuss that going forward. I think tonight what our goal is to look at the standardized tests that we have in front of us, sort of deal with the immediate incentives, and then we can have that discussion going forward.
Dr. Larkin?
Thanks. I guess I would agree with the sentiment that everyone has expressed, that we can't go back on promises or commitments or sort of expectations that have been created, and that we really do need to separate them out. That going forward we should do the things that we've said that we were going to do. And I guess in terms of what we do going forward, I don't think we need to be absolutely prescriptive and say this is what the incentive is, and this is how we're gonna pay for it. We haven't really even talked about that. But at the same time, I think it is incumbent upon us to give some guidance and oversight. That's what we're elected to do, and that there is potential, I think, for some divisiveness among students, among members of the community. It's we're not a big town. People know what's going on at different schools, and I think there is some potential for some hurt feelings, both as there would be if we said you're going to have a pizza party or you're going to go to the junior prom, and then we don't go we don't fulfill that. So I guess I agree with everybody. Sorry.
Thank you. And my main goal as a school committee person is to challenge every student that comes through those doors, and every student is welcome to come through those doors. There's no test to come into here. Everyone's welcome to do their personal best. And sometimes that turns out to be much better than anyone expected. We challenge everyone that comes here. We support them. And as a mother of 6 and a grandmother of 6, I know you don't change the rules in the middle of the game. You just don't do that. So things were promised to kids. They were excited about it. They worked very hard. They should get what was, just like everyone else said. It's ironic because I had a son who was on the front page of the paper every week for getting touchdowns and doing this and that. And I had a daughter who worked her heart out every single night in the quiet of her room on academics. And I'm the one that sat over there and came and said, we have to honor these students too. No one says anything about them till they're salutatorian. So then they started, because I was here, the student of the quarter. And we have student of the month. Every month, if you want to come, the first meeting of every month, we have SOS. That spotlight on success. That means if your kid builds a boat, if they builds a go-kart, if he paints a picture, if he's in the school, no matter what he does, he can come here with his parents and teachers and staff and be honored. And that's what the school department stands for, to honor everyone, give them their 5 minutes in the sun. And that's what we're for. So if these kids were promised it, I totally agree. Thank you. Do we want to vote on that? I need to vote, yes. Want to have a vote on that one
Does
issue?
anyone want to?
Does someone want to speak on it? Would someone like to come up and speak on it? Okay, come on.
Hi, I'm Kathy Ramus. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter is going to be graduating from college in a couple of weeks, and I have 2 little ones, both in 4th grade. I just want to take a minute to, I agree with all of you. The biggest thing is 2 of my children achieved the 4 on the kneecap test, and both were extremely excited to come home and tell me they were going on a limo ride. I want to commend Mr. Cabral for his efforts in bringing forth the incentive. I feel very strongly that both my children do very good in school. My son, I believe, was up for the challenge with the limo ride. I think it made him focus. I think it made him go the extra step to excel on the test and earn the 4. I think most of you has just said a lot of the things that I was thinking. I agree with Sally. Most of the kids, everybody excels in different things. Some kids excel in the sports, some kids excel in the academics. They all have their chance, in one way or another to receive that. I think I disagree a little bit with you with the accelerated programs. There's not much of that in the elementary level for the kids. There's in the middle school, they do have the honors, they do have, different things. And that level, there's not many things. The kids work together. They work with the groups of classes, the groups of students. They're mixed in. There's no special thing. People get taken out for extra help or different areas. I think when I've heard a lot of rumors about the limo ride and not everybody got it, we need to treat everybody fairly. I think I tend to disagree with that for, your future rewards. Well, again, I feel that my son really worked hard because of Mr. Cabral's incentive, and he put in the extra effort to make sure that he was going to focus and do good on his testing. I think also I wanted to, mention about what I was hearing, and I don't know exactly how much is true, how much is rumor as you hear things going around from the school. But, saying that it's not unfair and we need to make sure that all kids can receive the same award, kind of made me think a little bit. And, as you mentioned, well, that's not the case in everything. We strive for the kids to be better. We have an honor roll. Not all kids will achieve that honor roll. Would you take that away because everybody can't achieve that? It kind of, a little bit on the same lines, I feel. And I think I could go on and on with that. No homework passes. My kids receive a no homework pass for everything they turn in. If not everybody has the same home life, is it fair to take that away because somebody else doesn't turn in their homework? I think, you have to give the effort for these kids to strive to do, the best they can in each one of their activities. I feel very strongly, and I think he's all agreed with me too, to give a child a reward and take it away. I can speak again for both of my children that earned the 4 on both of the programs. They came home ecstatic to let me know about the limo ride. They came home almost in tears with a note saying, we're not going on a limo ride. It was a complete difference. I can't express to you the excitement that was brought to them by earning that 4. And just, I think, again, I agree with all of you, as you were saying, not to take it away. But I think I also agree a little bit more with, I'm sorry, I don't know what your name, but to allow the principals, to see what they feel is good for their classes, what would work for them. Again, I commend Mr. Cabral. I think he did a great job, and for my children anyway, I know it was a great incentive for them. I think it was a great idea, and I hope they continue with something to that means to help them achieve another 4.
I just want to say that I, because I'm very involved with the schools as well, I did hear that comment that we want everyone to get a trophy, and that really was, I don't know where that started, certainly not from this committee. This is the first time we've even talked about this. You have to understand that we're a public body, and we cannot discuss anything outside of these meetings.
And that's
So I do believe that was a rumor. I think that you will find, as a district, we actually celebrate individual achievement quite frequently. Not only spotlight in success, but we have pizza parties at school for those kids who get straight A's. We have, we have MVPs in sports. We have our section leaders in music. We actually embrace and we celebrate individual success. So I'm not sure where that rumor started. It certainly wasn't from us, because, like I said, what you're hearing tonight is the first time you're hearing from us. We have not discussed this issue at all, but we do have a responsibility district-wide, and I think, as the superintendent saw, while many of you wanted to keep the incentives, we also heard from a lot of people who had concerns. For instance, I had a middle school parent who called me and said, my child gets straight A's every single day in every single class. You're giving a limo ride to a 3rd grader. What are you going to give her? A car? So it does create issues that we as a district have to deal with, but we are certainly, certainly not about giving everyone a trophy. I think, there are individual achievements that need to be recognized and that need to be celebrated, and I don't think anyone wants to not do that. The other thing about the kneecap that concerns me is this really wasn't a test that was meant to measure individual achievement, and you may not be aware of that the kneecap was really meant to measure the school's progress on curriculum and to point out curriculum issues for us. It really is not. It was actually designed on a bell curve so that some kids actually will always fail. So we do need to take that into consideration when we're looking at appropriate recognition. Certainly, kids work hard on a test, whatever test it is, and we want to recognize that, but it needs to be, it needs to be appropriate and in line with what goals and what messages we're trying to send as a district.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak? Okay.
Hi. I'm Mrs. Ryan Ibbotson. I'm sure all of you got my email. I must say I'm very pleased to hear that my son will hopefully not lose the reward that for a week straight I heard about every morning. Geez, Mom, I really hope I get it. I really hope I get it. I really hope I get it. I think going forward, incentives are not bad. They will never be bad. It's more honing in on what your kid is good at. You have a kid who is good at everything, that's great. You have a kid like myself who struggled with 4 learning disabilities as a child and still struggle every day. I have all these people here to support me and to back me up to prove that. I don't think punishing children for the way that they are is a good thing or a bad thing. We accept who we are and we learn to deal with the cards that were dealt. I was the kid who could never reach a 3 or a 4. My goal was to do my best. My reward was taking that home to my mother, who said, "You did great, Ryan. You want to go to the movies?" That was my reward. A reward given by a principal who had a fantastic idea for a child like mine, 2 children like mine, both of them excel. Both of them are good kids. Giving him an incentive gave him drive. More drive. More drive than he already has because he is so competitive. It is not a bad thing to raise the bar and to ask everyone to step up to the plate. It's your time. It's your time. It's not anybody else's. This is your time. Take it. And if the reward is personal, then the reward is personal. These incentives that were offered at Ranger are not during school hours. They're not being paraded around, holding up signs saying, "This is my test score. Look how good I did." It was a goal that was offered to every child. Some reached it, some didn't. And in fact, 15% of Ranger kids did not reach it, 12% in math. The majority of those kids stepped up and hit home runs because that incentive was there. For the 15% that didn't in reading and the 12% that didn't in math, that's up to the parents. That's where parents need to come in and take part, just like my mother did. Otherwise, we're not going to have successful learning disabled adults. We're going to have learning disabled adults like myself that use it as, well, I'm learning disabled. You're not. Where's your goal? Where's your personal goal? I could see an anger if these kids were paraded around. If these kids were taken out of class time during school. Oh, well, I'm going here. You're not. Incentives are good. Goals are good. Personal goals are even better. And I think it's up to parents, teachers, and an entire community to set a goal and an expectation, because it's not a bad thing. It will never be a bad thing. And when you step out into the real world, we're all given goals with incentives. Whether you're in sales, whether you're anything, time into a job, it's there. It's not going to go away. And we need to start teaching it now, because failure, everyone fails. And failure's not bad. But failure needs to be more internal. I didn't try my best. I failed. I didn't get a pizza party or a limo ride or an ice cream party. That's not what we should be teaching. But to have incentives, and Kathy, I apologize. Kids like Shane thrive off competition and need competition. In external competition, you have a sister who is in the same grade who has so much internal competition. She doesn't need the incentive. She already has it. But you're denying kids like Shane, who have the ability, to step up to the plate and hit a home run. We need that for those kids. And as far as the middle school, I'm not sure how many classes there are that are for accelerated or old gifted and talented. But and how those kids get to there, or how are they nominated? Like, I don't know any of that. I will tell you, my daughter, entering 7th grade next year, will no longer be going to Tiverton Middle School. I find the middle school to be a giant black hole of even keel. Average is okay. And my daughter is not average. She will never be average. I don't care what the number is, she will never be average. We have an expectation at home for her, and I expect her to go to school and reach that same expectation. And that same, you're better than this. Instead of, well, your 75's average, it's going to get you through, knowing that she's capable of a 90. Challenge is good. It needs to be taught. That failure is okay, challenge is good. How do you feel when you turn around and walk away? When you hand that paper in, when you hand that test in, how do you feel inside, regardless of what the outcome? Effort. Internal effort. Be proud of how, regardless, be proud that you did your best. And that's where the stress needs to be. And some kids need the incentive. And I don't feel it's right to deny them an incentive to reach the best goal that they can, if that's what they need. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Kelly Levesque, and I'm the PTC president, Parent-Teacher Committee president at the middle school. We honor all of our students at the middle school. 5th and 6th grade get their dance. 7th and 8th grade used to get a dance, and we decided this year that they really didn't like it, and it wasn't something that appealed to them, so we did a pizza party and a movie, which I still think is off the mark from the feedback that I've gotten. And I think next year I'm offering just recess and a sugar-free popsicle to make the nurse happy, which is free, basically. It would cost us like $50. You know, something. We also do an incentive program, which we did not report today because it's parent-funded from the PTC. And with the change that we were hearing, we weren't willing to offer it to the entire school. But I'll explain what it is. We offered one incentive prize for one student in each grade, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5, which was a $200 value. It was either an iPod Touch, a $200 gift card to iTunes, Amazon, Best Buy, wherever they would like. A Nook HD and a Kindle Fire, I think it was. Whatever the Kindle is, that's the $200 value. And we would honor any student. It was a raffle that was decided from the vice principal. He went through all the scores. Anyone that scored a 4 was automatically in the raffle. And then anyone who went up a level, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 4s automatically got in. So he took all those names, put them in a hat, and we drew one per grade, called them down to the office, and let them choose what prize they wanted, and then we went out and purchased it and presented it to them. Just a different way of honoring everyone, yet spotlighting someone for hard effort. I think the challenge for all of us, because I think the bar has been raised with the limo ride, that makes me really scared, is now, I'll segue for you, Mr. Rarick, as we head to PARCC and we do assessments multiple times in a year, what are we going to do? We can't give ice cream parties 3 times a year. We can't give pizza parties 3 times a year. And I'm not sure we're driving kids on limos to the beach every 3 times a year. So I love, Suzette, I never knew that you did that at Fort Barton, but I love that you have something that really is just a pat on the back every day to every student, that this is, you know, I tell my kids all the time, school is your job. That's your job. Do your best. I love that. Ranger and PARCC kids, you're not getting limo rides at the middle school, I'm telling you right now, because I'm there for 3 more years. But, you know, I think it's good. I think I'm scared about the bar raising, and then I think that as we transition to our new testing for 2014, what are we going to do then?
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Anyone else? Okay.
Coming up, Kate. Is it Caden?
When I heard that I got the limo ride, I was super excited. And when I got home, my parents said that I might not get the limo ride. And that just made me very sad. Because when I get a challenge and I achieve it, it's not happy when they take it away from me.
Thank you, Kaden.
Thank you.
And we agree,
And
Kaden.
congratulations on your scores.
Thank you, Kaden.
Congratulations for doing so well. Everyone that did, thank you. So, did someone else want to speak?
She's all set.
She's all set? Or should we take the vote?
So the motion is to leave the incentives in place this year?
Yes.
And then look at it for next year.
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So now to, what do we need now?
Now, the conversation that we've said we would have regarding the district and the whole state, for that matter, shifting from the kneecap testing to what the students will be given called the PARCC assessment, which is based on core state standards, which have been adopted by a number of states. And I'll let Diane walk everybody through where we are regarding kneecap, the timeline and transition window, and what we're doing to get ready for the park for 2014. So Diane, you want to?
Sure, thank you, and thank you all for being here. It's important for us to build awareness of the changes coming down the road, and your interest and support are very much appreciated. So the presentation tonight will focus on 4 topics. The first will be the Common Core state standards, and then the PARCC assessment that you're hearing so much about. Next, we'll go into the impact on teaching and learning and technology. And then lastly, strategies, well, we've already discussed that, to help students achieve these challenges and the graduation requirements. So the Common Core state standards are adopted by 45 states so far. They are K through 12 standards for English, language, arts, and mathematics. The standards from Common Core are fewer in number than the standards that we currently have. They're more focused. They're supported by several national educational groups, institutions of higher ed, colleges and universities, and business leaders as well. The new standards are designed to prepare students for college and career readiness by the end of high school. They're internationally benchmarked, and they're much more rigorous than the standards that we currently have. So why are they important? The new standards will allow us to collaborate across states for the purchase of textbooks, the development of state assessments, and for professional development resources. And already since they've come out in 2010, we're seeing a lot of resources that are available from all of the different states. And the multi-state focus is really resulting in much higher qualities of resources than we currently have or have previously had, with states just developing standards on their own. So why now? The current practice of each state having their own individual standards really creates an inequity of opportunities for students within the United States. And it makes sense that all of the states in the United States share the challenge of preparing students for the jobs of the future.
But not everyone's doing Common Core, or is 45?
Right. There are the states that are not participating are Texas, Alaska, Nebraska, and Virginia.
And we have a later slide that shows the states that are participating in the park.
So how are the Common Core state standards different? In ELA, English Language Arts, there are some instructional shifts that we're going to see. The Common Core standards are much more integrated. They're much more emphasis on informational text. So that would be reading nonfiction, articles about science and social studies. And they're developed this way because in the world of college and career, that's what students are doing. They're reading informational text. The Common Core standards also place a lot of emphasis on students being able to use evidence from the text to present analysis and well-defended claims or arguments. So rather than asking questions that students could answer if they have some background knowledge on a topic, they're asking questions that are specific to having read the text. Common Core state standards also define grade appropriate text, and those levels from what we're seeing are more rigorous than what we're currently expecting our students to be able to read. In math, the standards are more focused than what we currently have. You've heard the expression, a curriculum that's a mile wide and an inch deep. Well, Common Core are more focused, and they really push students to develop foundational understanding. So we're looking at basic math facts, we're looking at fluency and accuracy, and fluency is a student being efficient and automatic with math facts and the use of algorithms. And Common Core is more specific in those areas, and for each grade level they have expectations for mastery at each grade level, and our current standards do not have that. The Common Core standards are also more coherent across grade levels, so they're developed to really build knowledge from one grade to the next. And again, they are more rigorous. They want students to see math as more than just how to get the answer right or how to follow a prescribed set of steps. They're promoting learning that's more in-depth, exploring and justifying alternate strategies, and applying math in new and varied real-world situations. So overall, more rigorous than what we have. So how will we transition? When the standards first came out, we held several trainings in the study of the standards. Some were funded through the Race to the Top grant that you might have heard of, the federal grant, and others we were able to fund through other federal grants. So all teachers have had some exposure to the standards. Right now we are developing a K-12 math curriculum aligned to Common Core state standards. We have 19 teachers from our district that are participating in that work, and this is being done in collaboration with Bristol Warren and Newport. We also have 5 additional teachers and all of the building principals who are participating in leadership training to support the implementation and changes to a new curriculum. We're also just finalizing our plans for work in ELA and developing a new curriculum for that area as well. So a lot of work that's going on. And then once we have new standards in place, we'll have a new assessment to go along with them. And the PARCC assessment, which stands for Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, is being developed in collaboration with 23 states. And we are keeping abreast of the developments as things unroll. We're passing information on to teachers. We're checking in to make sure that our professional development and the new curriculum that we're developing is in line with all of that. And the PARCC assessment will be for grades 3 through 11, and it will begin in the spring of 2015. It'll be given for ELA and for math.
Just for reference, we don't currently test our 9th and 10th graders.
Right.
So it'll be all through 3 to
And it will be not in the fall, but in the spring.
Yep, and we have, there is another national assessment going on that 25 other states are involved with, and it's very similar to PARCC. It's also an electronic assessment and also beginning around the same time. And these are the states that are participating with Rhode Island in the PARCC assessment. Here's the timeline for the development and implementation of the PARCC assessment. Right now, they're still doing field testing for the test items that are being developed, and field testing is where the test items are given in actual classrooms across the country, and they're collecting feedback on the appropriateness of the tasks. There's also an alternate assessment that's under construction, and this would be for students with significant disabilities. Similar to what we have right now, we have a Rhode Island alternate assessment. So this will be developed, and it will be for a small percentage of students who are unable to participate in the PARCC assessment.
So Diane, and just stop for a minute. You're saying that we're still, FY13 and FY14, we're still piloting and field testing it, but we're saying that we're developing curriculum
We're not piloting.
at the same time?
No, we're not. That's nationwide. We're not.
But
We're
we're developing
developing the math
curriculum
curriculum this year.
in September
And in Septem-
2013?
Right, in September it will come online, and then next year we're going to do ELA, so it'll come online in
So
September
we're
14th.
developing our curriculum while they're still piloting and field testing these new the new tests?
Yes.
Okay.
So how do you not have one before the other?
Because the PARCC assessment is designed from a blueprint from Common Core. So if we're aligning our curriculum to Common Core standards, PARCC is building off of those same standards, so it will be
In other words,
aligned.
The standards have been built, and we've
That are
adopted-
based on the curriculum,
Right,
that the curriculum is based
And now
on.
they're developing the test tie it to the curriculum.
But until you actually field test and pilot the test, you're not really going to know. I mean, you're not beta testing it. I mean, I'm looking at, you know, if this was a technology that you were developing, you would beta test it, see if it measures what you wanted to
Right.
measure, and then you would make changes. We essentially are not doing that. We're kind of doing it at the same time.
Again, for the folks at home, and we've talked about this, for the folks here in the audience, this is prescribed, and I don't like to keep saying it, but it is prescribed to us.
No, I know.
You know, from
This
RIDE.
is mandated, I
And-
know.
And all those, that's an excellent point, and there's all sorts of, you know, holes, you know, you pilot it, you know, in education needs, you pilot it instead of beta testing. You would pilot it, see how it goes, get your data, your baseline data, make your corrections, then you would implement it.
So we're going to kind of be
But
doing it
based on
together.
what, the timeline that RIDE has provided to us, this is, you know, again, the best information and the best way we think, you know, to address the 2014-15 kickoff.
Okay.
So there are two components of the PARCC assessment. The first is a performance-based assessment, which what we're hearing right now will be given in March. And the second is an end-of-year assessment. The end-of-year assessment is a multiple-choice assessment that is scored as students take it on the computer. The performance-based assessment will go to a test vendor to be scored, similar to what we do for NECAP right now. It's not scored internally. There are some other components of PARCC, two others, but they're optional for states, and right now Rhode Island is not participating in those. But these two components, all 23 states will be participating in. And the results from both components of the assessment will be combined for a total score that we'll receive at the end of the year.
Diane, before you begin, this was an issue that the school committee asked about and was concerned about, was the amount of time. And that's what these next few slides will address, that RIDE is telling us what to expect when we move to the park.
So for the ELA assessment, we're anticipating there will be 3 sessions. Each one will be approximately 1 hour long. Within this, the students will read multiple texts and write several pieces to demonstrate their ability to read and comprehend the text. Unlike our current NECAP assessment, writing will be factored in to the ELA score. Right now, when our students take NECAP for reading, their written response is not counted against them if they're not a good writer. So, but PARCC will be different in that they'll be assessing the reading and the writing together in one assessment.
Because for elementary parents, in grade 4, in grade 5, students are assessed in writing currently, grade 8 in writing, and grade 11. What's going to happen with the PARCC is that writing is going to be part of the reading component now. So not only are students going to have to, not only will they be tested for comprehension, they're also going to have to, they'll also be evaluated on their writing skill set.
And are these 3 one-hour sessions, it's all of grade 3 at the same time? It's all of...
That's still, hasn't been decided.
Okay.
Well, what the latest that we're hearing is that no, because they realize the barriers with technology.
And it was yes before, it's
Yeah.
no
And
now.
now it's
Right.
no.
So,
Yeah, I was going to say it was
and
yes
again,
before.
what Diane is saying, that's, again, the most, I say we don't know.
As they're getting more
As
information.
As we get more
Right.
information, it's subject to change. I think it's probably the best.
So this information is what we've been given most recently. The performance-based assessment that students will do for math in the month of March will be 2 one-hour sessions from what we're hearing right now. And students will complete a range of tasks that are focused on application of concepts. Students will be asked to solve problems involving the key knowledge and skills for their grade level. They'll be asked to express mathematical reasoning and construct a mathematical argument. So that's the communication piece that I referenced earlier and the difference with these Common Core standards. And there'll be more application to real-world problems. Also, if you notice at the bottom of the slide, for the high school, they will have separate assessments for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, and that's different than what we currently have. Right now at the high school in grade 11, students take one assessment that is incorporating all of those standards together. So this will be separate, and our grade 8 students who take Algebra 1, they will take the PARCC Algebra 1 assessment.
So that would be two one-hour sessions just on their Algebra 1, or just a...
Just if you're in Algebra 1, you get 2 one-hour sessions. If you're in geometry, in your sophomore year, most students take
Yeah,
geometry.
with the topic applicable
Right,
to whatever
to what
question.
it is. So in March, so what you have, what Diane just summarized, in March, there are 3 hours worth of ELA testing, and then 2 hours in math. And then, now we're here at May, at the end of the year.
Okay.
So at the end of the year, in ELA, there will be 2 one-hour sessions for grades 3 through 11, and it will be focused on reading comprehension and writing, as were the other ones. It will involve, again, several pieces of text that students have to read and pull the information from. And the end of the year is more multiple choice so that it can be scored quickly. In grades 6 through 7, it's the same setup, and from what we're hearing and seeing from samples, the text will be much more focused on science and social studies topics that students should be learning at that same grade levels, as well as articles on technical subjects as well. So the content of what they're reading is a little bit different than what we currently have in our NECAP assessment. Let's see if there's anything else.
What was the thinking with March and May versus like December and May?
Not to
That you've covered more of the curriculum.
You've covered more of the
Exactly.
curriculum, plus it's also
But
not
are you
as
testing them
overwhelming.
twice for the same information in March and May?
I'm going to assume that when it comes out, it's going to be like a teacher giving a mid-year exam,
Okay.
except it's going to come in March, and then the second test
It'll be like a
would,
final.
would in theory,
Be like
measure
a
what the
final.
child should have learned
The
from,
second.
in that second gap.
Just so close, March and
Yeah,
May.
within Common
Within the
Core
vacation.
state standards and the blueprint that they developed for the PARCC assessment, they've identified major clusters for each grade level, and those major clusters are what will be assessed. The March assessment will be more that higher level performance-based assessment, and that's why there are 2 different types of assessment.
And I would also think it's probably designed not to overload students, so that they're not taking 6 hours, in math and 5 in math, 6 in ELA within a 2-week window. That's an awful lot of, emphasis for kids really at any age, but especially at the younger ages.
So it's 5 hours in March and then 5 hours in May.
No, total.
Total.
Right. So
Well-
it runs between 6 hours and 5 hours total for the 2 sessions. Because there's 2 one-hour sessions in May,
Right.
and I believe it was 2 in math in March.
And we have no choice.
No,
Great.
There's no choice.
no, that's the top down. There's no
Yeah.
no wiggle room.
Great.
The end-of-year assessment for math in May is also 2 one-hour sessions and multiple choice. And again, this is the information that we've received to date.
Diane, if 8th graders take Algebra 1, then do they finish with the math by 10th grade, and then no math in 11th grade?
Correct. Once they complete the Algebra 2 assessment,
They
that
won't be
would be,
assessed.
they
They'll still
wouldn't be
take math
tested.
classes.
Right, but there'll be no more
By 10th
PARCC for
grade, they'll
them.
be done.
Correct.
They'll be done
Because
with
they took
math
it in the
PARCC
8th
in
grade.
10th grade.
Yes.
And just for some of our parents may not realize, 8th graders are eligible to take Algebra 1 if they meet certain criteria in 8th grade. So you essentially, your 9th grade Algebra 1 is moved down to 8th grade, and
Then
then they
came
take.
overhead.
Right,
With
and
all
they
the higher
sort of
level
move
math.
ahead, and then when you take geometry and Algebra 2 as a freshman and a sophomore instead of taking freshman, sophomore, junior. Essentially, it just shifts it down a year.
And I'd just like everyone to know, I went Saturday to the Rhode Island Association of School Committees in Providence. We all sat there and talked about this, and everybody had the same concerns, the transition, was it going to be more difficult? But it doesn't matter, because our job is to get the students ready. It's for the principals and the teachers and all of us to prepare them for whatever they put down on us. It does no good to complain. I have a whole folder full of pros and cons, who believes in it, who doesn't, and it doesn't matter, because we have to get the kids ready, you know?
No, but
Well, I'm not sure it doesn't matter
Yeah,
when you think about
it
it.
doesn't matter.
What we
I think
can't
we can
change it.
react to it.
We
and
can, but we
set-
can't, and the parents can also react to it on the state level, the Board of Regents and everything.
Well, no, but the focus we put on it, and if we teach to it, and if it's only our focus, and
Oh, no,
it's
no,
all we
all
do,
that, yes,
we can have
of
an
course.
impact on that,
Right.
and that's why we're having this meeting. So I don't
Exactly.
think it, I agree with Jerry, I don't think it doesn't matter.
Well,
think
what I
that's
mean
why
is,
we're having this
if we're gonna
discussion.
have to give it, we have to prepare the kids, you know, really.
Clearly, we have to prepare the kids to succeed on the test, but,
That's not all, though.
and that's not all.
There's everything
And-
else too that we wanna do and we can keep doing.
And I think that it's okay to give unsolicited feedback to RIDE and to the Board of Regents and other entities.
He does, he really does believe us.
On certain things, in all seriousness, and I'm not sure.
I'm totally serious.
No, I'm not, I mean, I have, obviously, but I think in this case, Sally hit on it. RIDE has a tendency, and especially the Board of Regents, I should say, has a tendency to listen to members, elected officials, like yourselves, and to parents.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of listening, I feel, from the Principals Association, the Superintendent's Association. There's not, we speak, but I don't think there's a lot of hearing going on. And I think it's more effective if you let people know, it's more effective if the elected bodies
And the parents.
and the parents, not that I don't, because I do, and I get the dirty looks and, you know, the cold shoulders, but that's all right. But I think what Sally's saying is that their RIDE is going forward.
Well, and we'll
Right,
go
and then-
forward
right,
with them.
And they're not gonna stop. And-
Right.
No,
and-
right.
But we do have control over certain things, obviously. And that's what Jerry and Deb are talking about. But it's like a snowball, you know, we're going down a hill at 500 miles an hour. It's coming.
But we have this discussion upside down here, because first of all, if we believe that this Common Core standards are right, and these are the types of skills people should have to succeed going to college and going to the outside world, if we believe that that's what's supposed to happen, then we need a curriculum which basically takes this into account, and we teach the right things to develop these type of skills. The testing is just an assessment which tells us how close we are to achieving these goals. So this is not to necessarily, this is basically a tool for continuous process improvement and curriculum improvement, as opposed to this evil thing that people will be tested and judged. Because the whole idea about continuous improvement, obviously there are some consequences, I know, but the whole process is to simply do better with education, so people come out with the right type of skills. And without measurement, it's completely subjective. So we can just roll the dice and see we are doing a great job.
And I don't think that's not what I intended.
No, I know, but the discussion is like this
Right.
evil thing which happens is the
It's because
testing.
It's a top-down event. There hasn't been a lot of input
I was going to say,
from
I don't remember
districts
being asked if I
and
thought
school
Common Core
committees
was the right way to
and
go, but.
principals associations, and the people who, school committees, superintendents, principals have to implement the plan, the game plan.
And we will.
And we will, but we didn't have a ton of input into the game plan. We're executing it. We'll call, you know, use a football term, we'll call the plays, but we didn't develop the plays. And a lot, and that's what I'm trying to express, is that there wasn't a whole lot of input, I don't want to say cooperation, collaboration. Of course we need our kids to have these skills to succeed in the 21st century. The question becomes more highlighted is when it becomes a high-stakes affair, and graduation, you know, is riding on it, and we'll get to that in a minute. So.
Yes.
Just ask a question. I don't want to do a presentation, but this is a very hot topic with me. I have a question for you, Sally. You mentioned that you went to a meeting Saturday?
Yes.
What is the overall, and not politically, but the overall feeling by the I would love to know what the other school committees in our state feel about all this standardized testing. There's so much emphasis, and with all due respect to all of you at there's a lot of emphasis, more than, it's not just a measurement of how our teachers are doing. It's now being held over our students' heads for a graduation requirement, and what you might not get is some kids that are honor roll kids that are definitely achieving on a daily basis in the school, that you should all be proud of them as students, and I'm very emotional, as you can see, and representatives of this community are now being told, because they can't achieve on a standardized test, that they might not get a diploma. But it's not because they don't have A's and B's. And what you have to understand, and I think most educators or most parents with children that have learning disabilities, is these kids learn, but they can't all be measured at the same level. And I take great offense that anyone would measure my children on a standardized test and compare them to everybody else. Just like these parents were saying, you know, my kids are not average either. Everybody has a strong, I think they all have gifts. I think there's so many kids that offer so much to this community. And it makes me irate, especially since I'm looking at colleges now, and more colleges are telling us they're not requiring the SATs, they're not requiring these standardized tests. The other issue that I have, and I don't want to say raise hand, but that any teacher that my children have had in this school would be evaluated on a standardized test that my child would take, because my child might not be able to perform as well as the next person, where I know my kids have growth, they have success. It makes me irate. And I just wanted to know, Sally, because I do want to speak to you personally, what the school committees in our state feel, because Rhode Island is so small, and I've been on the phone with the Department of Education, not Deborah Guest, but one of her associates, discuss this, and I would like to be more involved. But is everybody just falling to it because it's a mandate? Do they support it?
Well, what I can tell you is the last time we had this meeting at the state level, I talked to Deborah Gist and all her staff that was there presenting this. And I told them of my personal story when I taught at Durfee High School, the alternative class, special needs. And I had those kids graduating every year, same curriculum, just modified. It was fantastic. In that April, along came the MCAS. I said they walked down the hall with the rest of the kids. They came back into my room, and I've told this story many times with my colleagues. They were kicking the walls and they were swearing. And I said, what is wrong with you? And they said, you lied to us, Mrs. Black. I said, I never would lie to you. I had a fantastic relationship with them. Worked so hard with them all every day. They said, you convinced us we weren't stupid, and we found out today we are. And that was like, and I told them that story. And I said, so what are we going to do with this child or these children that come to school, do well every day, pass everything else, and are not going to be measured by that one day? You're not going to tell them they can't walk across that stage with a cap and gown. That's what I said to them. What are we going to do? You have to think about that. I haven't gotten an answer, obviously, but I did face them face to face and said that in front of everybody.
Well, I think the assessments are important, but I think
And they are.
they have to be held in what they were developed for.
Right.
And I just think,
So that's what we're debating.
Yeah,
That's why we invited all of you here.
Right, and I think, Mrs. Hughes, I've been talking to, emailing back and forth various school committee members across the state who I've just met being at RIASC and through other things, and I think we all sort of share the same concerns. We think it's an important assessment, and we think you need to be assessed, and it needs to be part of the puzzle. It just shouldn't be the only piece of the puzzle. Community service, day-to-day, grades. There should be a rubric, if you will, of, this, and this, and it would be nice if the school committees were able to come up with their own, graduation standards, but that's not what's being done. So I think the concern is, we all want an assessment, and you need to have, graduating needs to mean something, and I think everybody agrees, but it shouldn't be one test, one day. Because, like you said, some kids don't test well, some kids are, never, math is very difficult, and we certainly have those supports in place, but it's one test, one day, and there's so many other parts of what make our kids, and I think that's sort of the general concern with the people I've spoke with anyway, is that we want an assessment, we want graduation to mean something, but there is concern on the overemphasis on a single test.
And the other issue to consider is these are kids that are more at risk, because now if you don't give them a high school diploma, now what
That's
do they
right.
do?
What are they gonna do?
And not necessarily in our circumstances, but in other circumstances
True.
in the school.
Right.
These are kids that they can't even go into the service.
That's right.
I mean, I don't think you're doing anybody, I think you need to be held accountable. I think the student needs to be held accountable. I think the educators need to be held accountable. But to put all your eggs in one basket for a week in October is just.
And the other thing that concerns me is what you just said. Back in the days, SATs was everything.
Yeah.
If you didn't meet a certain mark, they threw it in the trash. I would fight for kids to get into college, and I would say, they are going to make it because of their day-to-day work habits and their, as you said, their competitiveness. They're going to make it, let them in, and they graduate with honors. But now the schools are saying, we're not going to look so much at that, so it's like we're going backwards. They're not looking at it, but we are, so we have to find it.
The only thing I think will be important is to bring someone from Wright to actually have this workshop on seminar here, as I suggested before, because some of your questions are absolutely legitimate, and they are being asked over and over again, and there are answers to these questions. So this whole system is set up to throw all the possible resources at the group of students who do not meet the minimum proficiency. Everyone, if someone meets proficiency, okay. You just go and keep doing what you are doing. All the resources are thrown at that group of kids who do not meet proficiency requirements. And for those students, it is not going to be, basically the demarcation line will be moved based on growth. So it means if student shows growth, such student would receive a diploma. So there are some mechanisms to deal with this. This is not pretty much just one particular demarcation line that if you are not going to go through that, you don't get a diploma. So that's the whole fear and panic in the state that's actually the model, but that's not the model.
The issue there, Mr. Burgundy, is for a student that has an issue with testing, it's not representative, this is the word I want to use, right, of the knowledge. So there are certain students that you can throw everything you want at them, but on a standardized test, they're not going to be able to express it. They might, if you could sit down, there's regulations, it has to be done, in October. It has to be done for a couple of hours, during that specific week. It's not realistic. And to throw and waste money and resources on a student that has the knowledge but isn't able to perform it the way some of these other kids are making proficiencies. And that's another issue I have. It's a waste of time and money, because it's not that the child doesn't have the knowledge, it's just that he's not able or she's not able to perform on a standardized test. And it has to do with, I don't know how much background you have, but because I don't, but with testing, and I've had to employ educational consultants, neuropsychologists. There's a real, there are kids that are very smart. And I think my youngest daughter, unfortunately can't attend the Tiverton schools anymore, and she's at a private school in Dartmouth that doesn't, and quite frankly, it's because of the standardized test, the way it changes the whole environment of education makes me sick, what's going on in the public schools because of but it's the whole, it's the way everybody just measures differently. It's just not, and it's a lot of resources that we're wasting on students that are being equipped with the right material, they're just not performing on this one particular task. That's all.
I just want to say one thing. I completely support what Jen is saying. My two children, I had two juniors this year, both in their math, they struggle daily. They stay after school for help. They went to the kneecap testing help classes that were offered. They did everything they needed to do to achieve that goal. They missed by 2 points. I have my stepdaughter who, without going into too much detail, had some tragic things happen, moved in with us full-time in 9th grade, starting this high school, her high school years. The first 2 years, She was a D student. She struggled to adjust. She has turned herself around. She has made honor roll every single time this year. She was so nervous to come home and show me that she was 2 points below on that kneecap. It was a punishment to her. And she has done and come so far. And for her to turn around for that one day, when she's acing her math classes, because both of them struggle. And they do need the extra tools, they do need the extra support, and no matter how much you do to prepare them for that one test, it's not gonna happen. And I know that they are thinking about ways of my children, and I guess depending on what the scores were, each child will have a different type of program offered, and specifically in my case, it's after school help. But regardless, my point is that the kids feel like they were punished. They feel like they did everything they needed to do, and just because they're not good test takers, they're not looking at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. They're not looking at the extra hours they're putting in on their own to try to achieve the grade for that quarter, to make the grade, not to get one test on the kneecap. And when I was just saying to a couple of the other parents, I went this weekend to a couple of college fairs, and all the admission people that I talked to all said that the one, I do not look at that one, that is the last thing I look at is the SAT score. I look at 3.5 years worth of work. And I feel that's what our kids, that's what it should be looked at, is the three, and somebody else brought up how, you get rewarded for excellence and you don't get rewarded for excellence. My kids are not, they're not accelerated. They are A, B students, but they're in no way, shape, or form accelerated. However, to me, the accomplishments that they made with the struggles that they personally, each one of them have, no one has recognized. So, in that regard, no, I don't feel that I think that the top of the class, yeah, they are recognized. I think the middle of the line students who struggle, I've had teachers say to me, it's amazing that she hasn't given up yet. That's how hard she works for it. But there's no one, the reward is, oh, you did terrible on your kneecap, so, now you have to have these additional classes. And instead of, and added on to the burden, senior year, they're not coming out with taking, study after study. They're taking full courses so they can get the classes they need to be able to get into the colleges that they want. They don't need the extra stress of this additional kneecap. And I, like Jen, feel extremely strongly. I understand that everybody here is limited in what we can and cannot do, but I think that the voices need to be heard, and that's why I was here tonight, because I really wanted my voice to be heard for my children's sake.
Thank you. Tricia, having a junior in your class as well, I actually talked to friends of ours, a parent whose child worked really, really hard, 9th and 10th grade, and made a huge jump to a high 2 in 11th grade, but she didn't meet that bar. So where is there for her to go? I mean, she grew so much from 9th and 10th grade, was so proud of that high 2, and now we're saying, oh, but you have to grow this much more. And they are just, same thing, they're beside themselves because she did so much work in 9th and 10th grade to get where she is, and now to say, well, but now you got to do this. It really, to her, was I didn't do it. It was a disappointment. I'm a disappointment. Why did I work so hard? So for me, and you're right, we're very limited in what we could do, but that's my frustration with having just one measure.
Also, it's extremely important to explain what this means, that the fact that someone got a 2, it is not a failure, because we should all feel like failures, because how many people here got a Nobel Prize? No one got it. So there's some, what we have to how you sell it to someone, in the same way as in soccer, when you explain to your kid, well, so what that this kid scored 10, you had a great game, you made a huge improvement, you have these additional skills, here is your next goal. And as long as we give students these opportunities to improve and show them these additional goals, as opposed to saying, wow, you didn't do anything. And if the system does not provide these additional support and these additional gradual goals which kids can achieve to basically graduate from high school, the whole thing is wrong. But these things are in place. Are they perfect? I don't know. So the most important thing is to be well informed on this. And as I suggested in the previous meeting, it's good we have this discussion by ourselves. We have to bring an expert and they will answer all these questions, because to all the meetings we went, these questions were answered and they are thinking about these things. This is not a system to punish everyone. But at the same time, if you think, if you're probably aware that, what is it, 60% of the students going to Rhode Island College, they have to take remedial courses in math before, which is high school courses, before they can take college courses. Dropout,
It's
CCRI. Okay, dropout rates at the universities are in the range of 50%. So what are we doing here is with education, we invest in students who are going to take college courses, and 50% of them fall off the ensemble line. So there's some problem with how they are prepared for this, and this is happening here, not in other countries. So what do we do about this? So obviously there are some very big issues in terms of how to tune up the system, and these are very legitimate questions and concerns, but without what's being proposed, I don't know what is the solution, because you cannot simply say there's no standard way of measuring a particular set of skills as people move on either to the workforce or they move into the college courses. It simply will be based on what particular school does in terms of grading something as an A versus as a B, because it's very well known that the grade by itself means different things in different districts, in different schools, or with different teachers. So this is some way of bringing everything to the same baseline. I think we should look at this, like everything else, as something we should, one, embrace, even if we just do it because we cannot get away. No one will ask us for an opinion, and try to see that all our questions, which are very legitimate, are answered by those who are in charge, as opposed to kind of warring and informing each other based on our own reading of what this may mean. And I think we should bring someone from Wright, and they will come here because they always offer it during all the meetings, am I right? So you just call us, we will be there, and they will be able to explain the whole system, and they will be able to show you basically, or answer these questions, what happens to these students.
Can we get to that?
Yeah.
Let's continue with
I
this.
think we can address a lot of that, and I think we can address that.
So we've got 2 tests in March, 2 in May.
2 in May. There's one other component that I just know a little bit about. It's a speaking and listening component. It's can be done anytime during the year, and individual states will be deciding how the results will be part of the summative assessment. And there are speaking and listening standards, again, the big push for improved communication for students, but we don't know
But we
much
haven't
on that
seen
one
any.
right
So
now.
will the districts be able to decide when you're going to give that, or will that come from Wright, or we don't know?
I believe the districts will be able to decide when it can be given. It's more classroom-based assessment. So,
And how will that be scored?
we don't know. I don't know that it's been fully developed yet, because it's not a component that will be part of the summative, so they've been focusing all on that. But they know that there are speaking and listening standards, and this is their proposed way to assess those standards. But we don't know much more than that. So I'll share more when I do hear on that. So next we'll talk about how the PARCC assessment results will be reported. And this is fairly recent. There will be 5 levels that they'll report the student results. Distinguished, strong, moderate command, partial command, minimal command. This is somewhat similar to NECAP. NECAP has 4 levels currently. And the thinking amongst states with the 5 levels that it would help schools to better target assistance to students. They're also defining what each level will look like at each grade level. So that's coming down as well. The more information will be
Now, during these piloted interims, there were tests that are being piloted that are PARCC throughout the districts.
Actually, if I
Some of
can
them.
just correct you, they were not part of PARCC.
Oh, what were they?
Those were.
Common Core?
They were, yeah, they were assessments
But they were
aligned to
similar
Common
to-
Core.
And who created those?
Those were developed by Measured Progress, and they were paid for by RIDE as part of their Race to the Top money.
And Measured Progress has nothing to do with PARCC assessments?
Measured Progress is the testing vendor that does our kneecap assessment. They do all of the test items, so.
So we don't know how well aligned they are with the PARCC, future PARCC.
We have people working on both the development of the PARCC assessments, and they've been involved with the development of the interim assessment, and they feel that they're very well aligned. Again, it goes back to that the Common Core state standards and the framework that they've developed for test development.
Okay, so if they're very well aligned, how did people do on them? I understand no one got a 4.
The ones that we took at the beginning of
Not just our
the year-
district, all districts.
Right.
There was not one single 4.
Our scores were lower on average than the normal kneecaps. But
And-
the PARCC assessments are, because of the realignment and how.
I mean, and maybe that's not
tested,
surprising
but
because
it's
we're not teaching the
surprising because
curriculum.
The
Yeah,
PARCC is
Correct, they
going
were
to be more
given at the beginning
challenging.
of the year.
It's going to be more challenging, and the best way to think of it is wherever a child is, if in 7th grade currently, a lot of that material is now going to be in the 6th grade.
Pushed down?
It's going to be pushed down.
Okay.
So it's not surprising that when we gave these assessments, they were, and that's why we gave them.
Right.
Let the children kind of get used to those types of questions, but also to provide us with feedback to look for gaps in our curriculum, which we're currently revising. So
Okay.
we use that information, for those purposes.
Okay.
Do you want to correct this part? and
Yep,
look at this?
the next piece, so we'll have our new assessment, we'll have the results reported. The next thing is that the states are working collectively to agree upon benchmarks for determining that a student is proficient, or they're using the term college and career ready. So that's still being worked out by the states collectively, and then past that, each state, including Rhode Island, will then think about how will the PARCC assessment be used for graduation requirement. So they haven't decided all of that yet. Once they make those decisions, then they then have to submit their plan to the federal government for approval, as they do now. So I'll just go through this piece quickly. We talked about the impact on teaching and learning. There are also implications for technology. The Common Core standards have a vision for preparing students to be college and career ready, and that includes being proficient with technology. So within the Common Core state standards, there are a number of standards at each grade level that reference the use of technology. And the same skills within Common Core state standards are showing up in the PARCC assessment as far as the types of questions and tasks that students will encounter. So it's really pushing some conversations with us as far as where and how we're instructing technology. As we all know, we have limited resources and equipment with technology, so it's a lot for us to think about and to try to find appropriate and meaningful ways to expose students to technology. But
And
those are just some of the skills that
Just
they'll be
something we
expected to
talked
do.
about, and Mr. Goodroll and the elementary principals have brought it up, is that we're wrestling with how do we get our children prepped to be able to do a lot of these things. A lot of kids in 3rd and 4th grade know how to go on the computer and bang around with a click. But as far as, typing, having to type a sentence, because all the responses, if it's online, are going to have to be using a keyboard as early as 3rd grade. So our question is, well, how are we going to address that? We haven't even, we're looking at it. We haven't finalized
Is paper
that.
still an option? They were talking about the younger grades potentially at one point.
Maybe. Again, this question mark, so that it makes it hard because RIDE has said things in the past, it's going to be this way. And then 6 months later, it's that way. And then it goes back to the original way. Because a lot of this whole thing is evolving, is a work in progress. So it's hard for us who plan, and by nature, we're very, detail-oriented as individuals, and we want to know, what are we required to do, what's the timeline, so on and so forth. And a lot of the answers are still very much up in the air. So
We want to know how the students are going to be able to show us what they know.
right, that's essentially what we're
what
going
if
to
they
be
know it and they
dealing with
can't
in the
put it
next
out?
year and a half.
Is the graduation requirement going to be the same with this as far as kneecap and?
Well, we're going to,
but
eventually,
also to-
kneecap is going to drop off.
Right. But during, in the interim, is the standard going to be the same for the kids who don't reach a 2, but have a GPA above a 3.0? It doesn't,
GPA
doesn't
they
matter.
watch each other out and they still get.
GPA is not relevant.
No, GPA, it's just kneecap.
High school graduation requirements originally were set up, it was really a third. If a child successfully did a senior project, passed all their coursework, midterms and finals, and took the test, they only had to pass 2 of the 3.
Community service was
No,
not
not
original.
part of graduation.
Okay.
So originally, when the high school standards changed in '06, a child could get a 1 or a 2 and still graduate. That
Well, if they get a
changed,
2 now, they can still.
but they can still
just a
grad,
1.
they can still graduate, but originally, it was, if you got a 3 and a 4, that meant you passed that component. It changed, I wanna say, Diane, '08, they changed it to the,
Yes.
to the 1, to the 1 and the 2, to where we
I
have our
believe so,
current
yeah.
standards. So.
Well,
it's a way-
effective for the class of
Right, what they
2014.
did with the testing was now testing's mandatory. You gotta pass, you gotta get at least a 2 or higher. Where before, you didn't have to.
So they took away
They-
regardless of your GPA and you.
GPA
you
is
get-
not relevant, it was never
You get all
part.
these other 3 things, you have to get a 1 or above a 1.
GPA was never part of the Board of Regents graduation requirements.
Which is partially proficient, right? You have to get the level of partially.
Partially,
proficient.
right, which is a 2, which is not related to how a child does in school.
Okay.
The GPA, the grade point average, is based on the cumulative averages for 4 years in high school.
So this new, in Deborah Gist's last report that she came out with, she said the GPA is going to come into effect. So that's not correct?
I'm not saying she didn't say it.
Did you hear that?
I heard a 2.5 or
I have
above.
not seen that.
Yeah, if you reach a
School
level
committee has
two-
received that memo.
I haven't
Basically
seen
setting
it.
a C standard over.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, let me put it that way. I'm not,
And it's very new if
if it is,
It hasn't
come to
it
us.
might be true, and it would be new to us. So,
Back in the day, SATs, when you had a learning disabled child, if you had the proper documentation that you could provide to the school committees, that child was given the test differently than the rest of the world.
Right, you would provide.
They were untimed and
That's
verbal,
correct.
or whatever you needed. And that was the SATs, that was not a high school
That's correct.
requirement. Is the same availability for the kneecap or?
Yes, I think we talked about this.
Because
They
some
have different
children-
testing with
To some extent,
They do
yeah.
allow for
For
some
some
accommodations. It can be given in a small group setting. They can have extended time. If it's the reading assessment, it cannot be read to them. So there are limited accommodations, but there are some available.
As long as this, I mean, how much?
I mean, those should be loosened a little bit,
Because
those standards.
Ryan is dyslexic, so she was given verbal on time.
Right.
Just because the reading of the test, she would have been there.
And we still make those accommodations in school,
But we can't read it to
We
them.
can't read, yeah.
We can't read.
How do we go about looking at the accommodations? Rather than lower, I hate to say lowering the bar for all, but accommodating people like myself who benefited from an untimed oral SAT.
I think
to
this
what,
is
260
where-
points higher.
I think Mr. Burgundy is correct, that really is a RIDE question. I don't want to give an incorrect response. But that's
I
something
think they've gotten that feedback from various school
I wanna-
committee members and
Yeah.
parents, but
And they are developing an accommodations guideline for the park assessment, and it may be on their website if you wanted to take a look at it. I have not looked at it yet
I don't think the
myself.
whole thing is a bad idea. I mean, had my mother known when she pulled me out of public school to put me in private school that in 8th grade I read at a 2nd grade, 8th month level, I probably would have excelled even further than I was able to. For it. And if we use them a little bit more as tools rather than.
well, and I think that's how we've always used the kneecap
Is
as
the
a
grading
tool.
the
Yeah.
same? Is the grading going to be the same, broken down? So say a math, you did okay, but wow, your geometry, you were off the charts. This kid's really good at geometry.
It will
Let's start
be when-
honing in a little bit more on what you're good at.
It will be good in high school because that's what it will do. Currently, students get assessed on all 3 subject areas in the 11th grade. And some students may not have taken it part of Algebra 1, maybe they took it in 8th grade or 9th grade and they're being assessed in the 11th grade. So this will give us a continuous flow of data, especially with math, following the student, and we won't have that 2-year gap which we currently have. So that would be helpful.
But we have other assessments. This isn't.
Yeah, no, this isn't the be-all, end-all, but this is
It
the,
is to get out of school.
it is.
Yeah.
It's a very.
Right now it is.
We're
Well, for
almost
next
done.
year's seniors it is.
If we can, we're
Right,
almost finished.
so just to finish up here, so we're transitioning from the kneecap assessment to the park assessment, and RIDE, it has begun to make some adjustments to the kneecap assessment to focus more on questions that are in line with the Common Core state standards. That way, as districts start to transition their curriculum and adopt new curriculum, they won't be testing students on skills or concepts that will no longer be instructed at those grade levels. And here again is the timeline for transition. Next fall, we'll stay with our current kneecap schedule for all grades, grades 3 through 8 and 11. In the fall of 2014, it will only be grade 11 that will continue to take kneecap, and that is because of the graduation requirement. So until that plan is approved by the federal government, that's still our criteria for graduation. So they'll continue to take that in the fall of 2014, and then in the spring, all grades 3 through 11, including 9 and 10, will take the park assessment.
Except for science, we'll still be doing kneecap science.
And what that means is this year's freshman class at the high school is that grade 11.
But
That's my daughter's
kneecap
grade.
science will still be taken
My
in the
daughter's,
spring.
on a personal note, my daughter's not thrilled with having to take it in the fall and then come back and take it, in the springtime.
Yeah, but I do want everyone to understand, this is just ELA and Math. We still have our kneecap science that we take in the spring.
Probably they're gonna take the kneecap in the fall, and they're gonna take the park.
Yes.
This is my concern. In the spring, when you're just still developing the curriculum, and they're already freshmen.
We'll have the curriculum in place by 14,
Yeah.
15.
But they're gonna be, right, so
But-
they'll only have the curriculum for a
Yeah,
year, and then
that's
test
correct.
it on it. and
Well,
then-
we've already started to transition, so teachers are starting to look at some items and lessons and resources that are available. So we're beginning to transition, but you're right, the timeline is very tight.
It's a tight timeline.
It would be nice if we could phase it in over a number of years with different grades, but we were given a little window.
Steve, I think it's Steve's turn next.
And next, we'll take a look at the changes to the graduation requirements. As I mentioned, states are still working on determining the criteria. So until all of that has changed, kneecap will be used. And now we'll take a look at the supports that we're currently providing for students to help them achieve and to meet the graduation requirements.
Because this year's junior class is the first class to be affected by this change in the graduation.
Come on, Steve.
That was the Pizzak.
Wrap it
Yep.
up.
This would be our graduation
Strong.
requirement plan for the class of 2014, and I want to go back to something that Bill said earlier. With 2008, the shift went from the kneecap being one of 3 participation areas that you have to succeed in and participate in to the class of 2014. Now that area is a partial proficiency of a 2. And as you can see right now, the kids in our junior class, we have 4 of them in ELA next year, which we will continue to update their personal literacy plan. They would receive literacy instruction based on what their reading levels are, maybe 3 times to 6 times a week, and that instruction would be from a reading specialist. Their English teachers and also probably their social studies teachers would also be aware of strategies and supports that would benefit those particular students. The area that the whole state is challenged with, and this is 4,000 students in the state of Rhode Island out of 12,000. Tiverton High School has 47 of them. This is something that we really had to put our heads together quickly. Once we received the scores, we met with the students, and I'd like to say that students and parents, I think we're being extremely sensitive to what all of the concerns and challenges are. I'm hearing them tonight. I've listened to them, and I've expected them, and I certainly understand them. What I would like understanding coming back to us, as Mr. Eric has said, is this is a mandate. And we will do the best we can to support and be successful for the kids who are in this math challenging situation. We are not using the word failure or failing. We are not doing that. You might have missed it this time around. We're going to help you get over it and get over the hump. We're using over the hump. We're not using the word failure. RIDE has told us that we're going to be providing multiple opportunities for the kids to be successful or to make statistical improvement depending on their initial score this year. The first thing that we've got to do, we've sent letters out to all the parents. We've got to schedule meetings with the parents and the students to explain to them, and this is a RIDE document that's been specified to Tiverton High School, a student progress plan on what they'll be offered for supports and interventions for the beginning of next year, leading into the opportunities to retake the NECAP. One of the things we've already had in place since students come here in 8th grade is after-school tutoring and a math proficiency class, which kind of assesses kids coming out of grade 8 who may have struggled with the NECAP or who may have been receiving remedial services in mathematics already, or who may even be just teacher recommended. So we're dealing with cohorts of students now for about 3 years. We're going to also offer this math proficiency class to about half of those 47 students who maybe have struggled a little bit more than the rest of the cohort. The other 20 to 25 students will be offered after-school tutoring sessions, approximately 8 of them in the months of September and October leading up to the NECAP. We've taken the scaled scores. Those students who are within about 5 or 6 points will receive the tutoring. Those students who need to make statistical improvement, who aren't close to that 1134 partial proficiency number, those students we'll be placing in a math proficiency class that will meet 3 times a week leading up to the NECAP testing. The students will remain in there until we get the scores back. One of the things that we're going to try to take advantage of, we have about 100 slots that the state has offered to all the high schools across Rhode Island for the virtual math learning module, where kids will be issued logins and user IDs so that they can do some of their own individual work in this area of math with the standards related to NECAP for the grade 11 students. All students in this situation will retake the NECAP in October, as with the rest of the juniors who would be taking it the first time. So that's an automatic retake that they are to be exposed to. The only shortfall, or I'll say a major shortfall, that RIDE has is that we do not get the results back until end of January, beginning of February. So we have students testing in the middle of October, but we don't get the results back for 3 months. So those students are in limbo. We're going to keep them in the math proficiency class until we get the results back. In the meantime, what we're going to do is explore other avenues of assessments that RIDE has offered to us. We're looking at right now working with BCC. The Active Placer is a 2-year or junior college math, ELA, reading comprehension placement exam. Students will be able to take that. We're going to have some of the instructors from BCC come here, and as long as they receive adequate scores, and the scores are in the 50s in either math or in reading, they would be able to use that score in lieu of taking the kneecap anymore. So students who are interested in taking it right away, we'll expose them to it. If students want to wait until we get the results from their retake in October, we will give it to them as soon as possible in the month of February and start there. RIDE has offered that in the months of either March or April, that they will offer to the seniors a consolidated kneecap, a narrowed down version of kneecap, focusing more on basic skills. However, to my knowledge, I don't think that exam has been completed yet, as far as being put together. So in a short period of time, this is what we're going to try to do to support the kids and to get them over the hump. And I'm not making light of it in any way. This is a challenge. It's a challenge for the kids, the parents, and it's going to be a challenge for us. But we'll take it on. It's a mandate. And in the meantime, we will see what happens on the state level as far as pushback. But in the meantime, this is our mandate, and we have to deal with it.
So my understanding, Steve, is that you have to take that second kneecap before you can move on to anything. So
Yes.
you take it as a junior in October, you find out in February you didn't meet the standard. You have to wait until the next October to
Correct.
take it again, and you must take that again. You cannot move to any other
That's the first thing
option.
you have to try to, yes.
Then after that is when you can move to acuplacer or other measures.
They actually allow comparable scores in SATs and ACTs,
Right.
which are kind of, I think it's a 470 in math for SATs.
So
They will allow you to
so
opt
to your
out of it.
point, you're kind of in limbo until February of your senior year
Correct.
while you're trying to go to college. And that was one of my complaints about kneecap, is if you're going to use it, it would have been MCAS, for instance, you give as sophomores. So they have all that time, where this is such a short window, and they're seniors and they're trying to do their senior project and all those other things that we require of them to graduate, and this is sort of hanging out there because of the time
The October to
constraints.
February timeline is very significant.
right.
If we could opt students out, if we got timely results back, we could probably instruct on a smaller ratio of students as well.
Right.
So that's a significant point.
Yeah.
Mr. Fazette, I have two questions. One is, of the 47 students, how many are sort of so close to getting the 2 that they...
About half of them.
About half, okay.
They're within 5 scale points of 1134.
Okay. And then at least at one presentation by RIDE at Rhode Island Association of School Committees, they committed to giving, and I think the term they used, very granular information about specific students not passing based on specific content areas. I don't want to use the word failure. Is that coming to pass, or was that just a pipe dream? Or
I'm sorry, I'm not really sure of the question.
so the presentations by RIDE at least suggested that the schools and the students and the teachers would be given very granular information about specific students' performance on the kneecap, so that they could say, your problem is with complementary angles, say.
Oh, all of the students get back an individual report that we work with, yes.
So you are getting that it's...
That historically, that happens already.
It's geometry, or it's...
Yes, we look at where the students are.
Yeah, and it's broken down into 4 areas, yes.
Okay.
Steve, if they take an acuplacer, how long till they get the results?
I'm not sure. That's something we've got to work through with BCC. It's all new with us. We've got information from them. We're going to make contacts soon through guidance to try to set that up. But they were good enough. They're going to come in and they will do multiple sessions for us at no fee. for the
Oh,
students.
that's nice of them. They've been great partners. So we're looking at maybe March or April before they realize, and they graduate in June, to whether they know if they're going to get a diploma. Yeah. Yeah, that was part of the frustration, is the time frame. Like I said, MCAS they take as sophomores, so it allows them all this time where, kneecap, again, wasn't meant to be to determine graduation, so we're taking a test that was never meant to determine
whether students should graduate or not, and we're sort of taking a square peg and putting it in a round hole, and now we gotta try to work
They've
around
got to
it.
turn the result time around. They have to.
Yeah,
for the
it's
seniors.
so
It's not fair.
long.
So the other thing the RIDE implied was that there was actually going to be a lot of flexibility in alternative assessments to show growth, as opposed to achieving a 2 or what have you.
They don't have to, the students who need to perform with statistical improvement will not get the 1134, but they'll reach a score that demonstrates improvement, and they'll be satisfied with that.
But it was even actually assessments other than the kneecap itself.
But they're not low scale. We're talking about the AccuPlacer. We're talking
Right.
about the SAT, the ACT. That's
those
still
are
going to be
pretty high
challenging
scale.
assessments.
Okay.
And they talked about AP scores.
And then the only one I've heard on
Like you were gonna-
Mr. Walken is the consolidated
Yeah,
kneecap,
one
which
of the
hasn't been
kneecap.
developed yet.
Okay. You know, I think it's also worth pointing out that Rhode Island is not the only state that's facing this same issue. The rates in New Hampshire are 36%, and in Vermont are 38%. And Maine is still not up to 11th grade testing, as far as I could tell. So, you know,
But those 3 states don't use it as a graduation requirement.
no, that's correct. But I'm just saying that they have similar rates of
Math.
performance at one level for 11th graders in math. And so I'm, with all due respect, I don't think it's a test I would be really anxious to embrace.
But embrace it we will.
I believe AccuPlacer is an online test and there's a review results.
That was my
That would be
impression,
nice.
and that would be so much better.
But they still have to take the kneecap.
Yes, they have to take the second
First.
half. Yeah.
Yes, first, and then they count.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you get on the AccuPlacer, you still have to take the kneecap.
You think at the end of the junior year, if they could take the AccuPlacer
Yeah.
and pass it, they would be done then.
But no, they have to take that second.
But I guess they
Can
would
they
know.
take it
if
as
they
a
would know
backup,
that
though?
AccuPlacer, they would know they still have to go through the kneecap. But
Right, they could take it knowing that, well, if I don't do well, you know, just that but I don't know BCC, how that's gonna work. We have-
That's something new for us. We've got the information, but we're going to have to work out a plan with them.
Steve, assuming that these 47 students already achieved a 2 or greater in the English portion, when they retake the kneecap the second time, are they just taking the math portion?
Just the math.
Steve, has there been any discussion about, so you go through all of this and you just have a child that isn't gonna make that improvement? So you have college acceptance letters and financial aid awards because these students will get accepted, speaking from personal experience, to good schools. And then you now have to say, sorry, I can't come because I don't have a diploma. Has there been any discussion about how that's going to be handled by the state? Because to me, that would be fairly discriminatory to a student that clearly colleges don't care about the kneecap, or they're not going to care about PARCC, they don't even ask.
But colleges want students to graduate.
But that's what I'm saying. So I guess has there been conversation about how you're going to address students that get accepted to college? You know, to me, that's a big disconnect.
It would be the same, again, without having them there, I believe the answer would be, it'd be similar to a student who didn't pass their
Whatever.
English 12.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they got because that's a graduation requirement established by the local school district. If the child doesn't meet that requirement, regardless of being accepted to college, the child doesn't graduate, at least in June.
Right.
So if they're legally, if that's a graduation requirement, they have to meet it.
But that's what I'm saying about, I think the presentations by RIDE, this was not going to be forever, but at least in the interim, there was going to be a lot of flexibility on the part of the...
I think by flexibility, it's what we've talked about here.
Right.
The growth, kids can grow.
Right.
They can still get a 1, but statistically grow. Every child, Steve has the numbers, what their number is that they need to grow by. The AccuPlacer, the ACTs, SATs,
APs.
It used to be, again, under the old requirements, you could use assessments made by the school. So if the child got a 1 or a 2, you could give them an assessment designed by the school, and if they pass it, they would meet that third tier. That all went away in 08 when they revised it. So I think when Ryan is talking about flexibility, those are the things
Their kind of
that they're
flexibility.
talking about.
So Phil, do they then have to repeat their senior year?
I'm sorry?
Do they have to, so say they don't pass and everything, now they're kind of like
Yeah,
stuck.
retention is
And they're in
certainly-
limbo.
yeah.
So they get this certificate of attendance, which is meaningless, can't join the military, can't do anything.
That's correct.
Do they have to then repeat their senior year?
No,
Do they
I
come back to
hope
us?
the common sense
I
approach
don't-
is going to be that they're just gonna continue to take the consolidated kneecap
Until
until
they
they
can
pass
pass.
it.
I
I'm
believe-
hoping we're gonna get timely results back
Again-
on that
Right.
when they tell us about it.
Except in 2015, kneecap goes away.
Yes.
Then they'll have to tell us.
To answer your question, that's an unknown.
I'm shifting,
It's a good question, it's a very legitimate question, but it's a big unknown.
It's a very
What
frustrating.
happens, where, again, as Steve said, I think common sense would dictate, if you're going down this path, you would give means to take the test until they can pass it.
And we would still give this
And we would still
resources.
provide the support.
But you can't
I would like to
take
think,
a
I
senior
can't
year.
imagine you're gonna say to a child, you're gonna come back and take
Every
what?
course that
Take what? If you're a
Right.
senior, you've already done.
You've done your
taken
4
it.
years of math.
So you're not gonna bring a child back to do what?
But that really
I'd
hasn't
align
been
it to, Denise, I'd align it to like, we have some kids who have to represent their senior project.
Right.
Yes.
So I would
Just
hope
keep
that it
taking.
would go along that, and we obviously set that up well before the graduation date. So I
But-
hope RIDE is cognizant of that as far as graduation dates.
But that's what Ryan is saying here with their plan. And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but that's what they're saying. They get multiple opportunities from the time that when they get their scores as juniors through their senior year, May, June, to retake it, or there's, as Jerry mentioned, other means, substitutes you can use. That's what I've heard at various meetings, with RIDE officials, that, we are giving them that chance to redo their senior project, because they're able to retake the test at least 2 other times. That's what they've
That's
told
what they're
us.
saying.
Yes.
Can I just ask, would there be any sense in looking at your 10th graders and having them do a practice kneecap math? If they do not perform, at that point, put them in an acuplacer assessment, get BCC in here,
I
teach
think
those
that's
kids.
something we're probably gonna look at right now. We do what you're saying, and we also take the teacher recommendations from those practice assessments in grade 10, and we keep kids in the math proficiency review class. The Accuplacer is gonna be a very, very new instrument for us to work with.
Yeah, but I would think that you're then taking that pressure and that questionable, what are we gonna do? If they have, a certificate that they don't need to worry about that math kneecap, their score is probably gonna go up, just with that.
I agree with you, and I hope that's gonna be allowed, but right now, the
It's not,
inference
no.
that I'm getting from RIDE is that nothing is gonna count until you retake that kneecap
Until you've had it
first
twice.
on
But you
record.
retake it, but
But no, I know,
you
I
don't
think
need to
it'd be
worry about it.
successful on it, to at least have that feeling that if you have to take the
But even if you
Accuplacer
don't.
later on.
Even if you don't, if you go, you at least go into it.
Yeah, what I've heard is no, they don't want that because they want the kneecap to be the test that you pass. They
Then-
want that to be the measure, so if you
Yeah,
take
but they're not
acupuncture,
being reasonable about it.
well,
But these, again, as I said at the beginning of all this, and Jan is correct, it would be helpful probably to have someone from RIDE, but where the power is, or where the decisions are made, it's with the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents are the ones that will decide all these questions when they have their meetings. Think of them as the giant school board for the entire state. And what they decide is what the commissioner will have to enact. The commissioner, much like I make recommendations to this school committee, she makes recommendations to the Board of Regents. If the Board of Regents say no, then they can't do whatever it is that's being recommended. So a lot of the questions that you have, we can have someone from RIDE come down and we can ask them, but in order to get your voices heard, the Board of Regents, in my estimation, I've been here doing this for 15 years, that's where it lies.
well, and as Ms. Mullen noted, kneecap's going away in 2015. And And so I called and asked RIDE, are we going to have the same, is it going to be PARCC and they don't know. We don't know if we're going to have the same growth and the same alternate tests once we move to PARCC.
If that other testing, that AccuPlacer can erase out what your kneecap, yes, you need to take the kneecap score. Yeah,
But only through, that's what I'm saying, only through 2015.
Remember-
Then we shift to PARCC and they don't know
No,
that it's
but-
going to look like this anymore.
But
It may
we
be
can't-
just the PARCC now.
But there's a lot that we can't do. We're
Right.
mandated, I keep on hearing, we can't do this, we can't do that. But if we as a community can decide, hey, let's offer our 10th graders.
Well, that's what we're saying. They're telling us you can't. That if you offer it before they take the kneecap, it will not count.
And again, I'm saying.
We're being told we cannot do that.
And I'm saying that can be it can be changed.
Right.
If parents and elected officials talk to the Board of Regents.
So are you saying
Yes.
write letters, make
I'm
phone
saying
calls?
write letters.
Exactly.
Well, go to the meetings, they're public
Because
meetings.
that certainly has been suggested and they just said no.
That would be for the student who doesn't
Yeah.
perform on a
Absolutely.
test.
That's correct. It's
Absolutely.
no question. And
No
that's a
question.
good idea, but, when you bring it up and you're told no, or
Right.
as Deb said, no, or we don't have the answer.
Or we don't,
Versus
yeah.
no, hearing no.
Right.
And not necessarily always having a reason why, but.
Can we as a school district implement our own, something very similar, just to be proactive rather than reactive on a 10th grade level going into 11th grade?
We could provide different supports in grades, 9 and 10.
Could do
and 11.
PSAT or something.
And we can make recommendations, make formal recommendations to the board. The committee could take formal votes and recommend, send letters to the Board of Regents saying, we would like you to consider A, B, and C. But we have to follow whatever the Board of Regents agrees to. The easiest way to think of it is whatever they agree on or approve is what everyone has to follow. But they're still talking about these things. So the issue of using the AccuPlacer, because it hasn't been happened yet. It's still a work in progress. So to say, can the AccuPlacer be used sooner than in the 11th grade? It's a legitimate question. Now, keep in mind with PARCC, we're testing now in 9, 10, and 11. So they may say no for whatever reason because of just that. You've got to get 3 years of data. But that's the point is, those are the questions that need to be asked.
Well, and here's my issue, guys. We need to be child-driven, not test-driven. And what I'm hearing is, let's do all this stuff for the test. We need to build our curriculum so that our children are learning what we want them to learn, so that our children are successful, and that they're going to be successful adults. And we know the test is there, and we do need to, be aware of it, but I don't want our curriculum, as one school committee member, to be driven by a single test.
No, I agree with you, Deb. And in an ideal world with the Common Core and the PARCC, you're going to build a curriculum that you think is going to meet the needs of the children to be ready for college and careers, and then you build a test that actually assesses the effectiveness of that curriculum, and you don't get this screwy result where 40% are failing.
Right.
So
Yeah, right.
I just have a question for Mr. Rivera. When I was on the phone with the representative from RIDE, she mentioned to me, and it hasn't been mentioned at all, I've been waiting to hear it, but she said after you go through all these hoops and tests and tests and tests, which why they think when you put a senior, they're going to do better on a test when they know now their whole future rides on it. She said that there is a possibility of a waiver. And she said that it was going to be very subjective from school committee to school committee.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, they have brought that up.
They've talked about it, but we haven't seen anything from it.
And again, we won't grant the waivers, the Board of Regents will.
She told me.
No, I think it's
Really?
She told me it was.
Well, we have to put it together.
Jen, let me put it this way. If that's coming, and we've heard it as well in discussions, time's running out. We need to see it.
Absolutely.
We need to know what it looks like.
But I thought it was, we can put the waiver together, but they still have to approve it, or the commission does.
I think it probably will go that way.
Yeah.
We'll develop a waiver.
But
We'll
she
say,
has to approve it.
Here's our students, and the way things funnel now, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I haven't seen anything writing, that it would...
Was that what you've heard
Go
as
back.
well?
What I've
Yeah.
heard related to that is if it's an individual educational plan issue, which is related to testing ability, anxiety, performance in the classroom on those types of common assessments versus the inability to be successful on kneecap testing at the outcome of an IEP team decision,
Right.
that waiver could be put in place. I don't even know if the school committee would have to be
Yeah, we
apprised
probably
at
won't,
that
yeah.
point, as long as the language of the IEP.
But
and
does
the
that
student
have
background-
to, does that have to be approved by RIDE?
I don't know
I was told
where
that
that's
it's
going to lie. I think that's a confidential meeting that happens within an individual school.
So we don't know for sure.
And that's going to be a matter of ethics.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, at least at 2 of the RIDE presentations I was at, that is actually what she did say, that it was the school committees that were
The
gonna...
way, again, waivers would be not to get people's hopes up. but
No, I know, that's...
I think waivers are going to be like the alternate assessment. For about 2% of the population, student population, they get the alternative ECAP assessment.
Right.
I can't imagine, whatever the waiver may look like, that it's going to encompass 50% of those 4,000 students. I think it will probably be a narrower, much narrower number. But yes, I've heard the same, but again, still haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's on, they haven't put it on paper.
I'm just curious to know if the school committee has ever made like a formal declaration to the state saying that our focus is we want to be child-centered, and these tests are not child-centered, they're test-centered, and they're Pearson-centered, and whoever else is making the tests. Has that ever been done, that the school committee has come out and said, we're not happy with this?
No.
I think the short answer is no, but we're now in the process of getting parental feedback. The committee has their own opinions, and we would need to
I mean,
probably discuss it a little further.
Again, certainly not since I've been on the committee, which has not been that long, but, one of the questions was, what is the opinion of the other school committees? And the subjective impression is it's not popular, that the other school committees feel that this is, you're right, test-centered, Pearson-centered, whatever vast profits they're reaping centered.
So my follow-up comment would be then, can we do something like that?
Yeah, my concern is that the commissioner has already threatened to pull superintendent certificates if they do not carry out this testing plan.
I'm not saying don't carry it out. I'm saying that a little bit of rebellion is a good thing, especially from a state that was, founded by a rebellious sort of guy, Just because they're saying that we have to do it, it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do, as we all know. And the anxiety of the parents who were at this meeting is a fraction of the anxiety that our students are having when they have to take these tests, and that's the only thing you hear about during testing time is, oh, kneecap, 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 park, 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 and the teachers are stressed, and I'm speaking from a teacher who gives MCAS in Massachusetts, and knowing that, I stress for my students and I stress for my son at home doing the same thing. Nobody wins in this situation where, like you said, putting, square pegs in round holes, we're focusing on the wrong things, we're making a test, the entire value of a student's 12 years in Tiverton schools, when we know that there's so much more going on in these schools. And if we're not going to be the ones to stand up and say, enough's enough, you guys need to work with us at the state because what you're mandating for our students is wrong. If we're not doing that, then we're just as wrong as the state and Arnie Duncan in, just going along with the status quo.
Well, for the first question is, what are we protesting? Are we protesting that the students are expected to have a certain set of skills when they graduate from the high school?
No.
I know. It's a rhetorical question. No, we don't protest that.
Okay.
2, do we have to have a curriculum which teaches them these skills? No, we don't protest that. Do we protest that there has to be some measure whether these skills are taught on the populations of students based on the curriculum which is in place, where if this is not happening, the curriculum has to be adjusted to teach these skills to students. which element are we protesting? The only element which I feel we can protest is how this whole thing is put in place and it's implemented, and how some questions are going to be answered about the details, what happens to students who, for example, to whom this method of testing or taking the measurement is not appropriate. How is this going to take place? So I don't think that we are in the mode right now. Certainly I'm not going to vote on any kind of protest right now before we all have our questions answered, and then when we are not happy with these answers, then we can say we don't agree with this particular item. Then our chances of success going to Board of Education, they are not going to listen. We protest, and which part is wrong? So this argument is futile.
Right, it's a high-stakes test that...
Whether or not children get to graduate and then move on to college. I didn't break 1,000 on my SATs. I graduated from Tiverton High School, top 10% of my class. I got a master's degree. Because I didn't pass because I didn't get a high grade on SAT, does that mean that I need to give back my degree and come back to school? No, it was a test. I didn't test well.
Yeah.
But there are some... I was able to show what I know.
I don't...
For every kid in this town is that the kids in this town need to be assessed on many different levels, not just with the standardized tests.
And that's my problem.
Are they useful? Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They're useful to help teachers know what kids know, what we need to work on with students, but they are not useful for determining whether or not a child deserves a high school diploma. That's all I'm saying.
Right, and Mr. Bergandi, when you have a test that the writers of the test on page 6 of the test, because I've read it, says do not use this test to make graduation decisions, and we're using that test, I have a huge problem with that. And I will protest that.
So we have to, we might have some discussion on this, but basically we have to be very precise in terms of what we disagree with, because the whole concept...
Well, and I might not disagree with the same thing you disagree with, and it may not be unanimous, but the majority of us have to come up with a direction for this district, how we want these tests to, are we going to teach to the test? Is this going to drive everything? Or are we going to try to build a curriculum with an understanding that our children need to be successful with certain things? I mean, that's our job.
And I just want to kind of piggyback on that, and I think Sally talked about it with me the other day. Some districts, in order to get ahead of the curve here or to address this issue, have scrapped their family consumer science programs, have scrapped music programs, have scrapped various programs that we value, even though we don't have many of them, that we've been able to hold on to dear life financially in some budget cycles, that we value. Instead, they cut all those programs and then say, well, look at all these supports we put into place. Look at all the coaches we have. But it comes at, and then not that that was a
they're
bad
all math
thing,
coaches.
but they come at a heck of a price.
They do.
And that's trying to back up or support what Deb was saying. That's what we have to decide as a district. And so far, we've been one to say we're not willing to sacrifice those programs. And we want to hold on to them. And the question is, how are we going to do that and do our best in meeting those requirements?
And we still do need to have a measure that helps us identify that we're being, I think Mrs. Ibbotson said it, that we are successful. So we need to have it. But we've always taken a very measured approach in this district to standardized testing, and I see it so flipping the
And
other way.
for those of you who probably may remember, the senior project was supposed to do that.
Yeah.
The senior project was supposed to measure what a child learned, to stretch their learning, but also to incorporate everything they've learned through grade 12.
And it does.
And it does.
Wonderful.
And we were like the third high school to adopt senior projects. And that was, at one point that was the bar. And now the bar, has changed away from student performance and measuring their strengths in different areas to more of a standardized assessment.
So I guess what we need to think about and come back with is how do we support curriculum? How do we support, our teachers with the curriculum? How do we understand that we have to take these tests but not have this be the end-all and be-all? These are challenges for us.
And it's going to be a laborious process and not a fast one. We're limited. We do have 2 PE days coming up next year for the first time in a decade. that we're going to dedicate with our teachers reviewing a lot of this information. The math curriculum will be, reviewed and discussed, and ELA and those types of items. So we'll have that support in place for the very first time in a long time. So that will help us as part of that.
And let's think about, as Kim said, maybe we do want to take a formal position. Maybe we don't all 5 agree, but maybe 4 of us do.
Well, we started.
We take a formal position and think about what that might be.
Right, we started this discussion talking about not going back on commitments we had made to children with the incentive program. And I think that actually, if we get to a point where we're talking about withholding diplomas from students because of their performance on the kneecap, when in fact, as Mrs. Palish pointed out, on page 6 it says the kneecap is not to be used as a criterion for graduation, that we will in fact be doing just that, going back on commitments we've made where the kneecap was in fact supposed to be to assess the quality of the curriculum, where do we need to improve, and so that we may be in that position where we should be testing something quite precisely, which is not using the kneecap as a means of deciding whether or not children who've done everything else that we've asked them to do should get a high school diploma.
And we just updated our strategic plan, and in it we fought for the multiple pathways to keep them, to go to the budget committee and explain why we need them. Because as Mrs. Ibbotson said again, all children have different talents and different ways to succeed. And that's what this school department and school has always been about. We fight for that, and so we want to keep all that and still be able to.
But, high stakes or not high stakes, the whole education is about high stakes. When you go to college, you're going to get a test. Whatever you got on this test, you get an average, you're either going to pass or you're not going to pass the course. So part of this, to me, a big eye-opener was when they showed me some of the questions which students have to answer to meet minimum proficiency. And some of these questions in math were in the range if someone walks so many miles per hour, how long is it going to take to get to some other point, which is 10 miles away from your starting point? These were type of questions. So big eye-opener is to look at some of these questions, which, because we kind of look at this and think, well...
Do you realize
I understand.
That has a reading, who has a language processing issue, can add all those numbers?
100% agree with you.
Because of the words, it's a math problem because it has numbers in it.
100% agree with you. So the question has to be answered, how can this type of question be presented to someone which has problems with, for example, reading whatever it is?
Practically, it's a practical thing. You make them do it. People are visual learners. It's not all from taking it off the... That's unfortunately the public school doesn't allow their educators to do anymore. So we have to go to private schools for the practicality, because a kid can't learn necessarily from those words. But if they're able to go out into the parking lot and see you do that, Mr. Burgundy is at point B. How long is it going to take him if he walks 5 steps a minute to reach Mrs. Polish 150 feet? If they can see that, they can do it. But that student doesn't necessarily get that from those words. And that's my concern, because we need to be accountable. We don't want to just, the high school, the diploma will mean nothing if you're just giving out diplomas to anybody. I get that. But there's diversity. We keep hearing about diversity. There's diversity in learning, and the kneecap doesn't take into account for the diversity in learning. And I'm insulted, and I know you don't mean it, but I'm very insulted in what you're saying. And it's a personal thing. My students are very different than your students, and not to get diverse, but your girls are wonderful role models for my freshmen. However, I don't think until you go through this, and it was a struggle for me, Mr. Burgundy, because I graduated from Tiverton High School in the top 10. And my husband tells me on a daily basis, they're not you. Get over it. They learn differently. And it's been very hard for me. So I understand that unless you've dealt with this kind of struggle, you can't grasp it. You just, until it's your vested interest, but when you see somebody that can do it, and by saying, that was an insult to my student because, and I know you didn't mean it that way, but it's not because he didn't understand, he can't do the math. He has a language processing issue that the words might not make sense to him in a math problem.
And the other side to that,
you
like I said,
misunderstood.
as teachers, we're spending so much time teaching to this test and how to take the test and how to read the test and what vocabulary might be on that test and what the problem structure might be, that we've gotten away from teaching those fundamental, we're not being able to teach deeply. We teach at the surface and then we have kneecap practice. And after a while, you begin to feel like all you're doing is working to prepare for a test. And I agree with you, Mr. Bagandi, that you have to be held accountable. I do agree. And I agree that we have to have expectations to come out of high school. But in terms of spending the next 19 years of my career teaching children what vocabulary words they might see on a test question is really not why I became a teacher. And your child shouldn't have to go somewhere else for those experiences. I'm sorry, that's my frustration as a teacher. I want you to hear that as a school committee member, is I want you to have my best every single day. And my best is not preparing these children to take a test. My best is getting them to think outside the box and read deeply and read literature and be engaged and be inspired. That's my best. And I'll give you that every single day. But that's not what you get when you ask me to teach to the test. And I'm sorry, but I'm very emotional about this because I don't think that that's why our children come to school every day. And I agree with you, Mrs. Hughes. It's not right. There's so much pressure on us, on them, for one test.
They know it's a way in graduation requirement, and it does. When I was in 4th grade at Nonquit, Mike Baker made a map that we pushed in a car.
Mr. Baker.
That's how we learned geography. California took 3 4th graders to put it on the floor. Do you know how many? I think about how many kids got lost because it breaks my heart when I think of some of the kids I went to school with. But on my elementary, you could verbalize. California was that big, and how size-wise, how insignificant
Rhode Island was.
are in Rhode Island. I mean, sometimes we lost the state, but it was a visual. And unfortunately, because I've been forced out of it, and I don't. It makes me sad because I truly, truly love this town. I truly want to give. I will do anything. I try so hard to support my principals in my school. When I was 4, I was brokenhearted when I had to pull my youngest out of here. And when I see what she can do with technology, unbelievable. When a kid struggles with math, do you want to do another math? I mean, really, who wants to read the stock market every day? Maybe some people do, but when you put it on a computer that challenges you, you hear it, the number come to you, you get a success and you get, bing, you go to the next level. That's inspiring. That's motivational. There's so many different ways, but we're not allowed to. We're not allowed. Unfortunately, your hands are so tied. You don't have the resources to give it to our kids. So, God only knows how long I'll be cleaning teeth. But my daughter gets the opportunity, and it breaks my heart now. And this meeting is making me feel even sadder that my oldest didn't get that opportunity.
But that's why we're here, is we don't want to become a district that teaches to the test. We don't want to be, and that's why we're here. That's why we're having this discussion, is that there are certain mandates we have to deal with, but how we react to those, how we rally together, how we, approach those, that's going to be up to us. And hopefully, we can do something. Hopefully we can fight to do things like get the AccuPlacer in place earlier. Hopefully we can, protest the kneecap because it was never designed as a graduation test. So we can do certain things, but if we rally together, guys, I'm confident that we can figure out a curriculum that we can work together, and if we all insist and ensure each other that we're not going to teach the test, it's not going to be the end-all and be-all. Yes, we're going to have to, it's there, but, we can be successful, because what's the choice? We have to approach it that way, and that's why we called this meeting.
I just want to make sure, and I appreciate that you said that I didn't mean this as an insult. What I wanted to say is that I don't know how we can argue that certain skills have to be present. You have to have certain skills to have a high school diploma. And the question is, how do we measure that someone has these skills? For most people, it might be okay to look at text and check a box, whether it's A or B as an answer or whatever it is. to make this whole system work, the questions like yours have to be answered. What happens for the student who cannot function like this, who cannot fairly demonstrate what they know using that particular form of testing? These are legitimate questions which have to be answered. So what my argument is that instead of simply saying, this whole thing is wrong, testing makes no sense, etc., which we will never win this argument. We can all vote for this and we can go to the State House. This is not going to happen. So we have to have a very precisely formulated issue which we disagree with, and as a sharp weapon to simply say, that's what's wrong. Prove to me that we are off the charts with our concern. Not attack the whole thing, but have a very precise thing. And bringing, first of all, the commissioner is going, not us, commissioner is going to present to the board her recommendations. She will be there, she will be heard first. And our question is now, what do we put at the same time at the table based on what she's going to say? So we cannot say, her argument say, this is completely wrong, that's not what I propose. So part of this is to bring her here or bring her staff here and hearing precisely how they are going to do it, because potentially you might say, yeah, this is still in the works. They did not carve this in stone. So hopefully there might be an answer which will be satisfactory to me. So that's my whole point, because obviously it looks like there is this, we are all outraged that this is happening, but which part is what we disagree with? Because on the concept in general that you have to have goals, you have to have a curriculum to meet these goals, and you have to measure things, we agree with that. How to do it fairly, that's what we have very many questions with.
Just one more story I'll share with you. When I first got hired back at Derby to teach that class, they said, we don't have any social studies books, you'll have to go up in the attic of the annex building, whatever. So we went up, we found the most beautiful history books, kind of the onion paper and the beautiful illustrations, colored pictures. They talked about the life of them, their children, everything they did. The kids loved it. And all of a sudden, here comes the MCAS. So they hired me to work in the summer to develop the curriculum. So they said this, page 25, paragraph 3, page 28. In September, they came to the classroom with this, a binder, black and white, questions, answers. Did the kids test well? Yes, they did. But as I said to Diane, and I always say, a mile long and an inch deep. We covered so much material. We used to be Treasure Island. My co-teacher would dress up like Captain Smollett. The kids loved it. They said, you can't do that anymore. That takes too much time. You have to cover these 10 things. So that's how I feel about it. And I know because I was there during the whole thing. And the kids might have succeeded on that test, but they didn't learn what they were learning with us. Yes?
I was just wondering, and I know that for our juniors, they need to achieve a certain number. And I keep on hearing lots of things are mandated. What exactly is mandated for the younger grades, for all the other grades?
Right.
How are we making them more important than we need to be? Can we say, all right, yes, we need to get our 11th graders to be able to score 2 or, show improvement. But can we take that pressure off our elementary school students, at least, our 3rd and 4th graders, and say, you know what, we're going to get a new curriculum. We're going to teach that curriculum. We're going to take these tests. We're not going to study. We're not going to prepare these students for 4 weeks, the whole month of September prior to this test. We're going to take the test. I don't know, don't publish the scores. Let the school districts know what the scores are so that they can do what they need to with those numbers. If the numbers don't mean anything to the students, then why? I don't understand, I guess, how tied our hands are in this situation. And I know, yes, for the juniors, we have to abide by their rules. But can we, as a community of Tiverton, decide, hey, let's start with our 3rd and 4th graders. Let's not put so much emphasis on what these scores are,
and let's not have our teachers worry about how their students are going to perform on these tests.
Well, to answer your first question, there is no mandate. In other words, there's nothing on the books that says you have to get a 2, 3, or 4 in 4th grade to go to 5th grade, or in 8th grade to go to 9th grade. So it's not like high school, in other words, where it says you have to score something in order to move out, to graduate. The reason for why districts become concerned with student performance is because our curriculum is integrated K-12, whether it's math, ELA, science, it covers all grades, and it's supposed to build on previous year's knowledge. So as everybody is being measured by the state on the scores. School districts are being measured. Their effectiveness is labeled by how well they do. Teachers, starting next year, how they do, how their students do over a 2-year window will now be part of their teacher evaluation. So the system that has been designed, that we currently are in, creates that internal pressure. It's created because of the requirements that are being placed on the districts.
Who evaluates our teachers, though?
We do.
Principals within Tiverton.
Yeah, we
So can we say, okay, you guys are saying that we need to
But
take
the
that into
teacher
consideration.
evaluation process, and it's a whole different strain, half of it's based, or a third of it's based on actual classroom performance. Another third is based on what's called student learning objectives that teachers have to develop. The other third will be the student growth model, or growth number. In other words, how well did your students perform over the last 2 years? And
In
they
what?
have
On
to,
these standardized
Yes.
tests?
on these tests. So in ELA and Math in grades 3 through 7. Now eventually that may go, we believe it's going to go 3 through 11 at some point. But right now, the teacher evaluation, starting next year, that test score is just going to be plugged in, and it's going to be basically count for at least a third of the teacher evaluation.
And again, that evaluation process had to be approved by RIDE. That was not.
It's called the Rhode Island Teacher
But then
Evaluation.
who says, hey, Mrs. Smith, that third is down and you're going to no longer have your position as a teacher? Whose decision is that?
It will be ours.
It'll be ours. So what do we care then?
Except that the state will pull the teacher's teaching certificate.
Certification.
And the state will not let the teacher continue to teach.
Certification's effective, which means essentially they can't teach.
Yeah, so it's not just like us looking at the data, they have to see it too.
What's the evaluation of the regents and Mrs. Guest?
The Board of Regents are appointed by the governor for various terms, and they in turn appoint or hire a commissioner. Just like the school committee hires a superintendent.
And the committee in turn tells Deborah Gist basically what.
The Board of Regents is the final say. That's correct.
So she just kind of.
It's just like a school district. I run the district day to day.
This is the new thing that they just put in, right? The woman, I apologize, I don't remember her
Eva
name.
Eva Mancuso?
Yeah, she's
Thank you.
head of the Board of Regents. That's correct.
But I still say, to that point, we can build a curriculum and take the test and use it for what it was intended to do, which is to tell us when our curriculum has shortfalls and
That's what we
things.
use.
Yeah, that's what we've always used it for.
Yeah, but how are you going to take the pressure off?
By.
That's a good question, and
Yeah.
I don't believe we have that ability
Well,
at the district level to do so, because the system that's being provided creates that pressure.
well, except that if we're
Natural
looking at the kneecap scores and our scores go down and we say, yeah, we know because of this, this, and this, it's not like we're going to lose funding.
Well, there are
there sanctions
consequences
There are
for schools.
sanctions
So-
that RIDE can impose.
So when they
To
rank
the-
schools
to you?
and label
To the
them,
district.
Right, if you don't make annual yearly progress.
correct. And also we have to look at certain subgroups. Are all students, are IEP students making
But my
adequate
point
progress?
is, before there was such a laser focus on the test, we were doing just fine. GLEs,
Quality,
we had a new curriculum,
Right,
we were constantly increasing. So what makes us think
Because-
all of a sudden, if we don't have all this focus on it, we're not going to continue to improve like we always have as a district?
Another piece to it is that was the expectation from No Child Left Behind that by 2014, 100% of all students
Yeah, but they've already backed
would
off
be
of that.
proficient.
So,
Right, but the consequences also come into play when schools aren't performing well. When we do the application for the federal grants, they specifically ask us to identify.
But what makes you think we're not going to do well? That's my point, is we've
Well, you have
always
to-
done well.
But you have to have your curriculum tied.
And it
whether we-
always has
Whether we
been.
like it or not.
No.
The assessment
And I get that.
is what it is. And if we don't teach those common core standards, and right
Right.
now it's the GLEs,
Right.
GSEs, and we have we have used it to help make curriculum corrections. But it's because of that's created, it's now gone from that to, okay, now students' graduations tied to it, and now teacher evaluations are tied to it. That it naturally creates tension within every school district.
So it's
an
a
offshoot of
fine
that.
line to balance
And I
what's
agree with
right.
what you're saying, I agree completely, but that's an offshoot of that.
Some of this is purely political. Pretty much the whole country is getting on the same bandwagon, because there's a problem with education.
Well, they're not getting on the same bandwagon because there's tons of parents that are opting out of tests.
I understand.
Texas is opted out of the Common Core, so it's a big struggle.
I understand,
nationwide now.
but it looks, but the whole problem is if there is, obviously, districts like ours, which we are doing just fine, are basically suffering because what happens in the other districts. So they are trying to basically have some form of
That's true, it's like keeping the whole
how to
class
measure.
after school.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Well, maybe we should cogitate on everything that's been discussed.
I agree, but we still have some other items.
Yes, so that's right. Anyone else?
I feel like the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the old days.
Okay, now we have,
Make important vote in midnight.
we have the budget, Mr. Begum?
No, it's just a quick update. Our budget number is 28,729,425. Mrs. Black, you reported today that there's no alternate budget.
And I passed out, I don't.
No alternate budget.
And here's the new budget.
So the only budget that's on the ballot will be the
Budget committee's budget.
budget, which has our recommended number, so
Which is very exciting.
that's very good news.
Exciting for the town.
It is, for the whole town.
So
The
they were,
first
from
year
other
in 5
parties in
years that
town,
we
there
have-
was no.
There was no,
No.
First year in 5
Was
years.
it
Today at 4
petitioner's
o'clock is
budget,
the
whatever it
deadline.
was? There's no.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Today was the deadline. at 4.
Congratulations to the budget committee, good work.
They did such a good job balancing everyone's needs out. Very good job. Budget committee.
The next is sprinkler bid award. I'm recommending, let me just get to it, that we award the sprinkler bid to put sprinklers into our 2 wood shops down here and the one at the middle school to Tri-State Fire Protection in the amount of $53,300. And this work will be done over summer.
Move that we approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Mr. Fiore, why do I see some red letters in parentheses?
Sometime Elaine used the color printer.
Enclosed in the package is the year-to-date financials through March, and there isn't much change from the prior statement in February, but I'll highlight specifically Mrs. Black's question. Toward the end of the document, a lot of the capital needs that we've been investing in need to show up on our profit and loss statement. And that's where you see our one-time investments, specifically with some of the computer equipment, some of the expenditures we've made for the auditorium seats, for example, show up in this equipment section. So it's not alarming that we're seeing the expenses here. And in fact, I'm anticipating we're going to finish the year on budget once again. So don't be alarmed. The only operational issues that we do see items slightly over budget are primarily related to the storms. We have snow plowing and some overtime related to that.
But you think we'll be okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so what, we're like 3/4 of the way through the year?
Yeah, 60.
So, and we're at
68.
we're at 68, 70%.
And that's
Good.
despite having some of the one-time capital already in there, so,
That
yeah.
new payment at the end of the year though, right?
That will partially affect this and partially affect next year's appropriation as well, but yes.
Oh. Okay, I asked the same question.
Okay.
Oh,
I remember
I was like, what?
But you know that's coming.
Yes,
We know
yes,
that's coming.
yes.
That's accounted for, yeah.
Okay, over the kneecap
Just under announcements, it's too late now, but I highly recommend if you haven't gone, go to the auditorium.
and see the
And
seats?
have a
New
seat.
seats.
Yeah.
The seats are very nice, and the way they match them up to the original color, the company did a fabulous job.
Police tape is gone.
The police tape is gone, you're not tripping over electrical outlets, so it's big.
Sorry? Okay.
Does anyone else have any announcements?
I have a question. I thought that we were gonna, after we talked about the kneecaps.
That's right, we have the second part. What
That we were
do.
gonna talk about future
Right.
incentives and whether we were gonna continue.
I think we meant that we would discuss it and come back, specifically the policy committee, but certainly interested in feedback from parents and teachers and administrators.
Will there be another time for that, Ben?
The policy subcommittee, are we even in agreement, that's where we're going with that? That we have open meetings,
Okay.
and that would be a great opportunity, plus we'll bring it back here.
Right, and it will be read and it'll be
Read and
available
as
for
much discussion
discussion.
as we need to have.
People are invited, obviously.
Yep,
We'll make it.
but our policy subcommittee meetings are open as well, and anybody
Okay.
can come
And then
in.
it'll
So
come
we're
back
having
here again.
kneecap testing in 3 weeks. I just want to make sure we're not having any kneecap incentives with those.
No, none of the
No.
incentives for this year are in place, we're not changing anything
No, I'm
for this
talking
year.
about springtime. We're
No.
not adding any to the springtime.
Well, whatever's in place is in
Manny?
place.
No?
Whatever's been in place by the
Whatever's been
principals is
Oh,
staying.
so
Whatever's
that
been
is, oh, come on. No, don't do it, Manny, come on. We cannot have that for the
Science,
science.
they haven't done science yet,
We haven't done science yet.
yeah.
We haven't,
But
I
tell
mean,
me
the
you're not
scores
gonna
aren't
keep
gonna
those
come
in place.
back. How do they, the scores won't.
Scores won't be
come
back until next year.
The scores still fall.
Right.
So they're gonna get their rewards
No,
next fall?
well,
No,
no,
we've never done
anything
kneecap
that's
science
gonna be,
because some of the kids that
Yeah.
are taking kneecap science at Ranger will be at the middle school next year.
Right,
yeah.
All,
Okay.
excuse me, that's all of it, it's only fourth grade.
Okay.
So we've never had incentives that
For-
transfer to another school.
Right.
That
So
would
there's
be up to
your-
the principal at the middle school to take care of.
Sure.
All right, well,
Did Lori leave?
so we're not having any.
So it's only what incentives are in place through the spring. They won't carry forward till, because we'll have a new policy.
No, it was the incentives that were promised
It
by
was
ELA
whatever
and
was
Math.
promised and is in place now,
Will take place.
and that's it.
All right, and you promised a limo ride for 2 4s and for a 3 and a 4.
Whatever any teacher or
Whatever
principal
they-
did, they can do, because all districts have something.
Okay, and my
For
only
all
announcement is to introduce you to our new friend back here. This is Sparky, and that's students performing acts of real kindness, Skippy. And we had to have a family meeting because the Tiger's very provincial, and he was very upset that a bear was coming. But I told him that he was a symbol of international comfort, and we needed him here tonight. So if you see Tiger sticking right there, you have to come along with him. So that's the anti-bully bear. He'll go around to visit all the schools. But I almost can't carry him because he's 4.5 feet tall, and I'm only 5. So.